Oh, sorry about that, Tucker. I'm gonna kick that off. All right, I'll say that again. This is the Town of New Canaan Town Council regular meeting and public meeting. We're meeting early tonight at 6 p.m. There's a 6 p.m. public hearing and a 7 p.m. regularly scheduled meeting or immediately following the conclusion of this public hearing. We anticipate this will run quite a bit longer than 7 p.m., but just so you know. First thing we'll do is we'll take roll. Penny?
Robin Bates Mason. Here. Rita Bettino.
Here.
Tom Butterworth.
Here.
Mike Jimsky.
Here.
Steve Carl.
Here.
Luke Hoffman. Mike Morrow. Maria Naughton.
Here.
Kimberly Norton.
Here.
Hillary Ormond.
Here.
Christina Ross. Penny Young. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Penny. All right, and you can also join on Zoom. Obviously, there's a link up on the town website, and we will recognize those on Zoom as well. Thank you for joining. Tonight's agenda, basically, the preamble of this meeting is Planning and Zoning held meetings on the subject of leasing town land on the west side of New Canaan for the purpose of a cell tower to fill in the gaps of coverage and address safety and quality of life issues. They looked at the Winfield Lane location. After taking public input and deliberating amongst themselves, they voted unanimously to send the initiative to the town council. Planning and Zoning weighed in on the layout, the access road, impact on trees, wetlands, and wildlife. They also talked about the projects and merits under our town's plan of conservation and development. And they voted to send it to us. Part of the approval was to ask that the council address issues considering health and safety risks as well. Obviously, the council takes public safety as one of our top priorities. So we will hear the public, we will hear them at length, as long as it takes, and as many meetings as it takes to convince 2/3 of this council to raise their hand and vote to approve. So
2/3.
Yeah, it has to be at least 2/3. Right?
Why? It's not,
Why?
not fun. There's no fun.
Oh, that's true. So only what,
It's a-
7?
it's a simple
7, yeah, sorry,
majority.
7, not 8. All right, I stand corrected. So tonight's meeting will focus, we're going to do a series of meetings. This meeting tonight is about needs, and needs meaning the need for cell coverage up in this area. And we've invited guests to speak tonight. We will have another meeting surrounding health, meaning that we'll talk about health for an entire night. So we'll be looking at RF studies, mapping, et cetera. And that meeting will take place likely within the next couple of weeks at a special meeting. So tonight we're going to listen to a needs assessment. We're going to have Ray Vergotti, who is here. Kevin Moynihan will speak. We'll also have speakers out from our emergency services. And after the presentations are completed, we're going to start our public comment, and we'll have everybody up that wants to speak tonight, speak for 2 minutes. There's a sign-up sheet in the back of the room. And again, we'd love to hear from everybody who wants to speak tonight on needs. So with that, I will kick it off. I don't know if Kevin, you want to start first and then go to Ray? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Town Council members.
Is your
Thank
mic
you.
on?
Is that mic on?
Is that mic on?
We can hear him.
We
Oh,
can't.
hey, Kevin, before you talk, Tucker, did you want to just go over anything? Or are you okay?
No, I think you summed it up well. We'll have the presentations and then we'll take comments for anybody in the room. And then if there's anybody on Zoom who would like to speak, if they would just raise their hand at that time and we'll call on them one by one.
Thank you.
So I think, Kevin, you're up.
I'm not sure this mic is working, but this one picks me up right here. Right, Tucker?
Yes, yes,
Hear
I
me?
can hear you.
Okay. Again, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Town Council members, for holding this public meeting tonight to review a
I don't
proposed.
think the audience can hear you is the problem.
Yeah, that's.
Kevin, pull that mic to the left towards you and speak right into it.
This mic is not on.
Yeah, that mic's not on.
What about that one?
Not to the room.
Lights on.
There it is. Oh, there.
There you
There it
go.
goes.
How about now? How about now?
Hey, Russ, turn up the volume.
Hello, hello.
There you go.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, once again, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Town Council members, we're holding this public meeting tonight to review a proposed cell tower at the 47.47 acre town-owned property of 769 Ponus Ridge Road that is being proposed by Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless. This meeting tonight is the second step of a process before several town bodies, and the Connecticut Siting Council will entail ample opportunity for public comment and participation by residents, neighbors, and members of the West School community. I would like to introduce and welcome Ray Brigatti again. He's the Regional Director of Homeland Towers, which is based in Danbury. I would note that Homeland Towers was selected by the town in August 2016 pursuant to an RFP to be the town's partner in finding solutions to improving self-service in town. I would also like to introduce and welcome, who is on by Zoom, Verizon Wireless's attorney, Ken Baldwin of the Hartford law firm of Robertson and Cole. I've been working with Ken for most of the last decade since I served on the town council, and I appreciate his and Verizon's dedication to serving New Canaan with improved cell service. The need for improved cell service on the west side of town has been well documented over the last decade, both by the carriers and by independent consultants hired by the town, especially after the greatly expanded use of smartphones by virtually every adult and teenager in town. Tonight, we'll also have with us John Keating of Telemountain Engineering, as he did the study for Centerline Solutions in 2014, which was involved the drive test of virtually every road in town to give us a report at that time of the status of our cell service and recommendations with respect to 54 properties in town. It's important to note that the quality of cell service is critical to the safety of our residents, since about 75% of 911 calls nationwide are now made by cell phone. Quality cell service is also critical to our first responders for them to do their jobs effectively, especially in times of emergencies when the power goes out and residents lose their cable-based phone service. Police, fire, and our ambulances depend more and more on cell service for the data streams that power their vehicle-based computers and devices that receive and send critical data that support their work. Thank you again for holding this meeting. And I look forward to answer any questions with Ray and the other presenters tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Ray?
Sure. Thank you, Selectman Monahan. Chairman Carl, members of the town council, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. By way of introduction, my name is Ray Brigatti. I'm the regional manager at Homeland Towers. As Kevin mentioned, Homeland Towers is a developer out of Danbury, Connecticut. I've been doing this business for approximately 23 years. And as a tower developer, what Homeland simply does is build the infrastructure for the carriers and for public safety. And what that means is we find property, we lease it, we then give it to the carrier to sign a lease with Homeland Towers. We then take it through the permitting process. If it's deemed approved, we will then construct the site and the carriers will go on it. The carriers these days in Connecticut that are operating are Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish Network. In addition to the carriers, public safety. When I started doing this business 22 years ago, the landscape's changed immensely. These towers have become critical, just like water, sewer, and electric. And first responders rely on this infrastructure immensely. I have some history here in New Canaan, as many of you are aware. I first started at the Silver Hill Hospital and worked out an agreement with Dr. Ackerman at that time, Sig Ackerman, and we built a tower at the hospital. We then answered an RFP that the town had issued back in 2015, 2016, and we were chosen by the town of New Canaan to more or less partner with to solve the coverage gaps here in New Canaan. And there have been some serious coverage gaps. The carriers over the past 20 years have given up on New Canaan, to be quite honest with you. They've given up on a number of towns here in Fairfield County because it's very difficult. Homeland Towers prides herself on working on difficult sites, which is something that we do. So I started and did the site at Silver Hill Hospital. We were awarded the RFP by the town of New Canaan to solve these coverage gaps. We first started to look at town properties, Irwin Park and West School back in 2017. The message that we received was, Homeland, can you please look to address the coverage gaps in the northeast and the northwest sections of town? And we heard that message loud and clear. So we put our head down and worked in the northeast area, and we were successful in leasing, permitting, and constructing a tower at 183 Soundview Lane on the Keith Ritchie Marina property. That is a 90-foot monopine tree. I'm pleased to announce that AT&T is on air. Verizon is in the midst of construction there, and we expect T-Mobile to follow soon thereafter. We then focus our efforts in the northwest section of town, specifically by the reservoir. We secured a ground lease at a location of 1837 Ponus Ridge Road. We took it through the siting council. Last Thursday, the siting council took a non-binding straw vote and voted 4-1 in favor to support that project. That is a 110-foot monopine. And involved in that project was not only Verizon, AT&T, but the town's public safety needs, putting antennas at the top of that tower. So we've kept our word and trying to solve the coverage gaps in the northeast and northwest. We've now come back down to the west side, and that's what brings me here, obviously, this evening for the past few months or few years. What I thought I would do is I can share my screen and bring up a site plan and just discuss it so people can see it visually on the board. We did a site visit, obviously, with P&Z, I think on October 23rd, where P&Z members and town officials and the public were invited to walk the property. And this property, as Kevin mentioned, is 769 Ponus Ridge Road. It's a 47.47 acre parcel with the school obviously up front on the west side. And then in the back is all wooded. We then did a site visit as of yesterday with town council and members of the public and various town officials for the benefit for you folks to see the site in person as well. So here this evening, I thought I would just simply describe the project, answer any questions. Obviously, I think tonight is really focused on the need. We know there's a need. Verizon know there's a need. I wouldn't be here trying to develop a site if we didn't think it made sense. We didn't think there was coverage gaps and unreliable service. So with that said, I'll bring up the site plan. So what you have before you on the screen, if everybody can see, and I'll move my cursor around to explain the property, just for orientation purposes. This is north, this is south, east is to the right, and the west is to the left. You have the West School that is right here. This is Winfield Lane cul-de-sac. And I'll just zoom in a little bit. There's a little history with Homeland working on this property. We had originally proposed a tower up next to the existing water tank facility. And this is the water tank that's outlined. It's roughly 100 by 100 foot parcel owned by Aquarian. The town had asked through the process of providing them site plans, can you push it further to the east and gain as much separation from the school? We have since pushed it further down the hill to the east, where we lose elevation. The original proposal, when we were just around 550 feet from the school, was for a 110-foot structure. We lost elevation of roughly 50 feet. We're down in an area now that's lower. We are now proposing a 145-foot structure. We are proposing access off of Winfield Lane, which is the cul-de-sac here. The access drive would consist of a 12-foot wide gravel driveway. It would transverse slightly west. There's a very small wetland crossing, approximately 25 foot in width, that we've had our wetland scientists flag. We'd propose some culverts there. The access drive would then continue down toward the cell tower structure. The approximate length of this gravel drive was 650 feet. We would bring utilities in off of Winfield Lane. There's an existing transformer and pole there. We would trench the whole run from the street to the cell tower. And the reason why we trench for underground utilities is these sites are critical. We don't want trees coming down and taking out wires. So we tend to trench all of our sites with underground utilities. The actual compound itself is a 75 by 75 lease area. We are proposing a fenced compound right now of 50 by 50. Within that fenced compound would be the center of the tower, and there would be space made available for Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish, and the town's public safety. We're proposing landscaping on the north, south, and east side of the compound. That landscaping would consist of 24 Norwegian spruce plantings. One of the recommendations from the P and Z on the 25th was asking, could you swap out your hemlocks for a hardier plant, which we did. So we've since changed it to Norwegian spruce. I would like to add that this design is not set in stone. We know there's a give and take and an open dialogue on this process and the design. And should the town deem this to go forward as our landlord, we can make certain other changes and recommendations on this project. The site itself, the carriers have backup generation. And what I mean by that, in the event the area loses electricity, they have generators. Typically, it's a diesel or propane generator. In this particular case, Verizon is proposing a 50 kW Kohler propane generator. So you'll see a propane tank within the compound. An elevation plan simply shows a 145-foot structure. When you see these antennas, they're separated by 10 feet. Whenever we build a tower, we make it co-locatable for all the carriers. It's just smart business. We plan for the future. These towers are over-engineered. We don't know where the market's going. When I started doing this 22 years ago, there were 6 carriers. It's now down to 3, and Dish Network is really a new 4th one coming into the market. But we design the towers to handle the carriers and public safety. This is a line of sight technology. It has to be above the tree line. It can't be below the tree line. So that's why we're asking for 100, not we, but Verizon is asking for a 145-foot structure. And that brings me to a point where I can just briefly touch on the permitting process. In the overall process, if the town wishes to enter into a lease with Homeland Towers and it's viewed favorably by town council and by Board of Selectmen, and there's a ground lease that's secured between Homeland and the town of New Canaan, Homeland would then enter into a lease with Verizon Wireless. They are the anchor tenant here. We would then prepare a what's called a technical report and a docket, an application that would actually go toward the Connecticut Siting Council. For those of you who don't know what the Connecticut Siting Council is or who they are, they go by the acronym of CSC. They're a state agency out of New Britain, and they oversee all transmission, utilities, solar, electric. They have 100% say on towers here in the state of Connecticut. Now, you folks are in a unique position because you effectively be our landlord. So you have a little more leeway and say on how you want the site to look and perform and be and so forth. But at the end of the day, the Siting Council will have the ultimate jurisdiction, but the town has a tremendous amount of input because you're the town and you're a landlord. That process is when it's filed with the Connecticut State Siting Council. It's a very transparent process. It's a public process, much like you're doing here. Everything gets uploaded onto the Siting Council's website. There's a number of information that goes into that docket. We do a visuals. We do a NEPA report. We do a SHPO report. We do a phase 1 report. We do coverage plots. It's rather thick at the end of the day. It's not a easy or quick process, but it's a very thorough process. We also have to show other sites that we've looked at, why we've looking at this particular site. Should the council deem the facility to be approved, and that's about a 6 to 9 month process, sometimes a little quicker, sometimes a little longer, we would then come back to the town of New Canaan and secure a building permit. And that's what we did over on Soundview Lane. We went through the Connecticut siting process and came back and worked with the building department to secure a local building permit. At this point, I'm happy. Well, I'll show one more slide so folks can get an idea from an aerial image showing trees and streets and so forth. Actually, I'm going to go to a Google Earth. This is the location of the proposed tower. It is 900 feet from the school itself. It is downgrade, as I mentioned earlier. This is the.
Can you enlarge that right now?
Sure. Actually, for some reason, my Google's not sharing, but let me go back to something. Let me go back to my prior one. Okay. Here's an aerial image as I was just mentioning. For reference purposes, this is Ponus Ridge Road to the west. You have Winfield Lane, which is the cul-de-sac. The access would come off of Winfield, and then the gravel drive would come down to the proposed tower location here in the woods. This is 900 feet away from the school. I've also shown the outline of the 47.47 acre parcel. So council members can gain an idea of the size of the land and what we're looking at. And there's been questions asked, well, can you put it further away from the school? Can you go 1,000 feet? Can you go 1,500 feet? And everybody has an opinion on that, obviously. We did look at a spot off here off Llewellyn Drive. And because of the elevation down there, the engineers would need roughly a 185-foot tall structure. And we're sensitive to that. When I do a site in any given area, I look for the least visual impact. 185-foot tower here is going to have a visual impact, in my opinion, over here on Llewellyn and these homes on Carriage Lane. Where we are on this particular location of on the upland of 900 feet away, we can't go further east because of wetlands and steep slopes. So we kind of pushed the envelope as it is, taking it and moving it all the way down slope. Speaking on visuals, this is a viewshed map. This is computer generated using LiDAR, and it shows the tower location, and it shows a half-mile radius and a mile radius. In typical viewshed maps, when we run these, the purple will show where the tower is seen above the trees. You're hard pressed to find that in this site. In my 22 years of doing this, I rarely come across a site, even at 145 feet, where the only stretch of purple is literally down off of, I guess, Hanford Lane, possibly, off of Frogtown, and at the very end of Winfield. This is computer generated, obviously. What I always suggest and what we've offered with the town is to conduct a balloon float. We'll do a balloon float for our visuals for siting council. And it's nice this time of year to take advantage of leaf off conditions where we would come out to the property. We'd float this red helium balloon to 145 feet, and we'd have our visual consultant drive the area and document where the tower is seen from and where it's not seen from. And that really paints a true picture of what we're looking at here. But right now, this site is looking as if it's actually buried in the tree lines because of the size of the parcel and the topography. So visually, I think you're going to be hard pressed to make an argument that you're going to see it. So that's basically the overview of the site plan, the process, my background. At this point, I'm happy to turn it over to Attorney Ken Baldwin at Robinson Cole and Shiva Gadasu with Verizon RF. He's the engineer that prepared the coverage plots, and I can bring up the coverage plots on the screen as well. And I would like to add, because this meeting is about need tonight, I've reached out to AT&T, and they've expressed a very strong interest and wrote a letter, as a matter of fact, to your first selectman, that they need the site. Now, we're not here because we threw a dart at a map. We're at this location because there's a need here, there's a coverage gap here, and we're trying to fill it. And this does a nice puzzle piece on providing that coverage. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Attorney Baldwin and to Shiva. Ken, if you'd like to maybe open up, and whatever slide you'd like me to bring up, I can bring it up, certainly.
Great. Thanks, Ray. Good evening, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person with you. But again, Ken Baldwin with Robinson and Cole. And in this matter, I represent Verizon Wireless and Homeland Towers. I've been working with Verizon for nearly 30 years on developing cell sites throughout the state of Connecticut and Western Massachusetts. And spent quite a bit of time over the years down in New Canaan. As First Selectman Moynihan said, we've been working together for at least a decade, but spent some time with former First Selectman Rob Malazzi. And I also remember dealing early on with Jeff Picard on the Utilities Commission many years ago to try and work on ways to improve wireless service in the town of New Canaan. What we need to do when we go to the siting council is demonstrate for them that there is a need for the facility. The siting council will balance, as a part of the application process, need against the environmental effects. So the first step obviously is demonstrating need. What is on the screen now is a fairly typical coverage plot that the RF engineers at Verizon will pull together. And what this plot, this particular plot shows is existing wireless service within the town of New Canaan, as well as some of the sites in the adjacent town of Stanford to the west there, because some of those sites have coverage that bleeds over into the town of New Canaan. Verizon currently has 3 macro cell locations in New Canaan. They're on the Silver Hill Hospital location that Ray mentioned earlier. And I'll just point out, Silver Hill is not shown on this map. And the reason it's not shown on this map is because it's a second tier site. It's further away from the West School. So the coverage from Silver Hill doesn't really affect what the RF engineers look at the West School. And Ray, if you could put the cursor on, just for orientation purposes, where the West School parcel is located to give a sense of what we're talking about. So Verizon has antennas at Silver Hill Hospital. We have antennas at the Waveney Park water tank site to the south. And then Verizon has antennas on a site that's called New Canaan CT, and that's rooftop installation at 39 Locust Avenue. Verizon also has 3 small cell facilities, and these are utility pole mounted installations, 2 in the center of town around the train station, 1 on a pole on Pine Street, the other on a pole on Park Street. And then there's another small cell down by the Merritt Parkway. You see it at the bottom of the screen there, New Canaan SC7, and that's at adjacent to 129 Ponus Ridge. And again, those are small cells that are designed specifically to provide capacity relief to Verizon's network. So again, this is existing service in town. And if you break it down into total area, if you think about the town of New Canaan and it's approximately 22.5 square miles of land area, the existing sites that Verizon maintains in town cover approximately 18% of that land area in the area shown in blue. And that includes the sites. There's one site to the north in New York that actually extends over the border a little bit. Let me take a half a step back and talk about the different colors you see on this map. Each of the colors, the blue and the green, represent a certain signal level. And when Shiva designs these sites, he looks at these 2 signal levels. The blue is negative 85 dBm RSRP. It is what Verizon calls in-building coverage. It's a stronger, more reliable signal strength. It's something that Verizon attempts to achieve everywhere it can. In towns like New Canaan and in pretty much anywhere in Connecticut, given the topography, it's difficult to expect to get that level of coverage everywhere, but that is certainly the goal because it is a much more reliable and stronger signal strength. The green represents negative 95 dBm RSRP, and Verizon calls that its in-vehicle signal strength. Reliable service, yes, not as reliable as the blue, but it's certainly acceptable from a coverage perspective. Areas that do not reach at least negative 95 dBm RSRP are not shown in any color other than the white, the underlying white that is the base map for this facility. And that is not to say that necessarily if you are in an area not shown in green or blue and maybe that area has negative 96 dBm RSRP, it doesn't mean that you couldn't make a call or hold a call. It means that the signal is a lot less reliable. So if you're in those areas, you're more likely to drop that call, or you're more likely to have trouble initiating that call. So Verizon works when it designs these sites on that reliability standard and has developed these signal strength levels to design its network and provide reliable service to not only its customers, but emergency service providers throughout the state of Connecticut. So again, in the town of New Canaan currently, based on the existing cell sites, Verizon provides negative 85 dBm signal strength to approximately 18% of the town's land area. And if you added up all the green, that is about 11 acres, almost 50%, approximately 50% of the land area in the town at that in-vehicle signal strength. If you go to the next coverage plot, what Verizon then does with these existing sites and the coverage from the existing sites is they then generate a computer propagation model that models what the coverage would be from, in this case, the West School site at a centerline height of 140 feet. And that's the next plot that Ray's going to click to. And you can see how the area of blue and the area of green expands in the area around the West School parcel. What it also shows is that the coverage from the West School would overlap with coverage from the other existing sites in the area to some extent. Now, there are still areas of white around this site. There's a lot of topography in town, as you all know, and some of the signal from the West School site will not be able to get into some of these areas. But generally speaking, with the West School parcel, you get some really nice coverage in the west center of town that Verizon is simply lacking today. The overall coverage footprint from the West School parcel alone, if you were taking it in isolation, adds about 11.5% of the total land area in town at negative 85, the blue area you see there, and about 28% of the town's land area at the negative 95 dBm. The other thing we looked at, and we presented this to the Planning and Zoning Commission a couple of weeks ago, is as Ray mentioned, there are 3 other sites in town that Verizon is currently pursuing. Ray's tower site up off of Soundview Avenue. We've been approved to share that facility and construction is underway. We've been pursuing, attempting to share the existing tower at the New Canaan Country Club for what seems like decades, but we're still pursuing that with SBA, that tower owner. And then, as Ray said, we intervened in his docket up at 1837 Ponus Ridge, what we call New Canaan Northwest. So we took the coverage that we would expect to get from those 3 locations and superimposed it over the map that shows the existing coverage. And what it shows is a much more significant area of the town is now being served by Verizon service if you include those 3 northerly sites along with the existing sites. What it also shows is that area right around the West School is kind of like the hole in the donut, right? You've got service around it, and you've got areas of weaker service or no service in that west center portion of the town. And then when you go to the next map, we then brought in the coverage from West School. And you can see how that fills in that hole very nicely. So much so that if you calculate the land area or the amount of land area within New Canaan covered from all of these sites shown on this map, the 3 proposed sites up to the north, the West School parcel, and then all of the existing sites to the south and east of the West School parcel, that gets us a negative 85 in-building signal strength to more than 55% of the town's land area. But more importantly, if you look at the area in green, Verizon now would then have coverage of nearly 93% of the land area of the town of New Canaan. That's something that frankly, we never thought was achievable. But given the efforts of the town in this regard and Homeland Towers over the years, this is something that we think is imminently achievable. And we're very happy to be a part of this process. I'll stop there. Any detailed or specific questions? We've got Shiva on the phone who can address them as well, but we're happy to answer any questions regarding these maps and what the West School does for Verizon's service.
Thank you, Jonathan. We'll start with some questions from the council. Hillary?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Thank you both for your presentations. That coverage map looks great for Verizon customers. But not everybody in New Canaan is a Verizon customer necessarily. So in order for whatever the need is to be met, we would also have to have buy-in from everybody else. So I guess that's more of a comment than a question. Secondly, I understand this sort of amorphous need for cell coverage, but we still haven't drilled down into what that need specifically is. Is it when you're driving down the road and the call drops? Is it for emergency services? It's my understanding that there's an antenna on West School that can serve our EMS and fire. Is it, if the lights go, because most people have Wi-Fi in their homes and boosters. So it's not necessarily a need for cellular in everybody's home unless the lights go out and you need cellular during that time. But a lot of people also have generators, but cable goes down. I understand that. So what I feel like what we really need to do, particularly in this meeting, is define specifically what need we're talking about here before we commit completely to putting up a 140-foot monopine tower behind a school. So I'd really like to, I just hear, we need this, we need this, we need this. And it's like, well, what do we need it for? What is the need? And not to, I mean, I understand the emergency needs. So I just want to hear some specifics on that.
Yeah, Hillary, let me address that with our first responders, because today vehicles have public safety radio, which is handheld devices as well as radio in the car, but they also have computer devices and other devices that require data from cell towers. And our EMS ambulance corps people can explain that. Our fire chief can explain that. Our police deputy chief can explain that. So if you want to hear that answer right now is why the need for cell service for the emergency first responders, we can answer that here.
I can hear it now. I mean, we also, I don't think this is disclosing anything, but we also received an email from somebody on EMS that seemed to call into question necessarily the need for that cellular service. So I would like to hear that, because that was a very compelling email from somebody in the public.
My concern is that the public came to speak, so that's up to Steve, whether we're going to spend time on
Well, this is not,
that.
this is just answering the specific question.
Yeah, so we have to take some Q&A. Well, we have the experts here, especially with these coverage maps. We want to make sure that we cover that. We are going to have everybody speak that wants to speak, and we've got, we've got all night. So we'll get to it. I mean,
I think the coverage map is interesting. I did want to see, my initial question was, do we have a coverage map that shows the tower on Upper Ponus and what that covers without the tower behind West School?
yeah.
So
So
that-
let's stay on the coverage map for now and
Okay.
finish with Jonathan. And Jonathan, just to be clear, as you put up
Okay.
those maps in sequence, you've added the last one. You've added all of the towers that we have, Soundview. So that represents if you added every tower that's proposed, correct?
That's correct. Right. That's the three towers to the north, New Canaan Northeast 2, which is Soundview, Country Club, and then 1837 Ponus Ridge.
And if those, so Soundview, we just have one carrier on there so far. So this is representing if Verizon jumps on there as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, Verizon has been approved by the siting council to share that tower, and construction has started. So early next year, that site will be operational for Verizon. The Country Club site is going to require some tower modifications, and SBA is working on amending the lease documents with the Country Club so that it could be used and shared by Verizon. That is not a done deal yet, but it's in the works. And it looks like it is going to happen. I wish I could tell you when, but I can't. New Canaan Northwest, that's the Ponus Ridge site, and that's the one Ray spoke about that has received a straw vote blessing from the siting council, but not the formal approval yet.
So to answer some of Hillary's concerns about when and how are we dropping calls, can you go back to the current coverage that we have now and sort of zoom into some of the holes that we have and just walk through a typical day in New Canaan? Where are we dropping calls and why do we need to add these extra sites? So,
Sure,
Just to be clear, though, this is only for Verizon customers.
right.
that's
I
correct.
don't know what percentage of
So-
do we know what percentage of New Canaan are Verizon customers?
Let me
Perhaps you
make,
can
let me
answer
make
that.
a comment about, so AT&T, which got a $9 billion contract with the federal government to build FirstNet.
Mm.
Right, after 9/11, actually, the federal government got very concerned about increasing communications interoperability for first responders between cities and towns. So FirstNet allowed AT&T to get federal dollars to go out and build more towers
Mhm.
and develop a system where first responders have priority
Mhm.
on their system. So in an emergency, other calls are blocked and the first responders get through.
Great.
Verizon, who can perhaps Ken can address this, sort of matched that service, but they don't have the towers, and they're sort of catching up now to what AT&T has done in New Canaan in the past 5 years, 10 years.
Great.
So that's part of the. Ken, can you address the FirstNet and the comparable service from Verizon?
Well, but part of what we're saying too is that, and what I heard was that most 75% of 911 calls, which aren't coming from first responders, they're coming from our residents, are done by cell phone. So if we're looking at the coverage map and we're telling our residents, this is going to make you safer and your calls go through, we have to be clear that it's what we're seeing right now, coverage maps is, it's only going to make your calls go through and not get dropped if you're a Verizon customer. I just want to be precise about this, guys, because this is a really important
Yeah,
point, and
agree.
I want to be specific about that. So I don't know what percentage of people are Verizon customers. That would be a helpful fact. But anyway, continue. Yes, but I think this is compelling. So I don't want to put that down. I just want to be clear about what we're talking about. So everybody's on the same page.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. This is just Verizon's coverage maps, but I can tell you that AT&T and Verizon follow each other around the state of Connecticut on a fairly regular basis and often have similar needs. The network, it's been in development in Connecticut probably since the very early 1990s. And the two major carriers, Verizon and AT&T, share hundreds of the same facilities, just so that the service can be provided comparably. It's a competitive business, no doubt about it. And Verizon and AT&T compete for customers. T-Mobile is a part of that mix as well. And Ray mentioned Dish Network, the new entrant into the market. But in New Canaan, AT&T is on the Soundview Lane Tower. They're on the Country Club Tower. They're planning to go on the 1837 Ponus Ridge Tower. So my point is that their needs and Verizon's needs are similar. I can't speak too much, Kevin, to their FirstNet contract. I'm familiar with it. While Verizon does not have a contract with the Department of Homeland Security, it does have contracts with many emergency service networks and finds that many of these same emergency service providers will utilize whatever wireless network is available. And so what you will see ultimately is if these tower sites are built out and the carriers are able to install antennas on each of these sites, all of the carriers will be able to provide comparable service throughout the town of New Canaan, and that's ultimately the goal here. So what this map shows, though, is existing wireless service of Verizon Wireless in the town of New Canaan. If in the areas that aren't green or blue, you got nothing. There is not enough signal strength in those areas to make a call, to maintain a call, or to hold a call, whether you're standing still or driving along the roads. Now you see how, based on topography, some of the areas of green stretch out a little bit further from, for example, the New Canaan site. They got some areas to the north and northeast. where there might be some coverage on Route 123, but it's spotty and it's not reliable. And then you go further north on 123 and then you run into areas where there's no service at all. Same thing on 124. These sites only have a limited coverage footprint, so they can only do so much. And because there just aren't existing facilities, mostly in the northern part of New Canaan, there's no service or extremely poor service in those areas. So that's essentially what this map is showing. Everything that is not either blue or green is no service.
Thank you. So back to you, Ray. So in order for us to look at this holistically, without AT&T on do you have overlay for AT&T for us to see as well?
They're not part of this project right now. They
Understood,
yeah.
but in order for us to look at this, I mean, we really should look at the whole picture rather than just, as we just said, it's looking at 40%, 50%, whatever that market share is. We're not seeing the whole picture. So when you overlay an orange AT&T over that, what does that look like?
So Steve, the point is AT&T is far ahead of Verizon because they've been more aggressive in the past 5 to 10 years building towers.
My point is we should look at that. I mean, that's something we should see. To Hillary's point, I mean, you've got to look at this, all together. So guys, we can't, we'd be here all night. If we applaud everything you like, we're going to be a long time. So let's not applaud. Let's just get through this. It's not going to be an easy night. Hold on one sec. Does anybody from the council have any more questions on the site maps we're looking at while we have the experts on the phone?
I'd just like
Christina.
to make a comment. When the gentleman just stated that if you're not in the green or blue area, you have no coverage, it's not true. And that's why Steve is asking if there's an AT&T overlay, because I know that in the map, it doesn't show areas that I know there's coverage. So I don't know if I'm getting the whole picture. This is a tower being designed supposedly to accommodate cell range throughout the town, but you're pushing it or presenting it based only on Verizon.
Verizon is the lead on this project with Homeland Towers. I reached out to AT&T about 2 weeks ago and asked them why they're not funded for this site. Carriers work on annual funding. If they could respond back on what their need would be. And I knew what that answer was going to be. They've got the same need as Verizon. There's a hole there. And they wrote a letter to your first selectman stating that if the site were approved and built, that they would come to it. Just like the tower that was built at Silver Hill Hospital, they went to it. Just like the tower that was built on Soundview Lane, they're installed, and Verizon's in the midst of construction. Just like the tower on 1837 Ponus Ridge Road, Verizon and AT&T are part of that siting council application. So as Attorney Baldwin mentioned, they tend to follow each other around because they're all on the same sites, except for the country club, where that only has T-Mobile and AT&T, but that only reinforces my comment even earlier. Look who's going on the country club, Verizon. So it's the same science, the same networks, the same heights, basically. They're all on Waveney Water Tank. There's no coverage here. And AT&T wrote a letter stating that they would come to the site. In addition, I believe your first selectman has reached out to the consultant from Telemountain, and he can speak to the carrier's needs. They completed the report in 2014 on all the carriers, and I believe he'll be speaking tonight.
Could we have John Keating speak for a few minutes, because this also addresses an independent analysis of 2014 and where it stands now based upon.
Sure. Let
ahead,
me just
John.
finish up on any questions on the site maps to.
I have a question on, I don't know if it can be answered after, but so a lot of people have been asking, the difference between macro and micro cell technology. And looking at the coverage map, I guess some of the questions are, do you have to achieve the coverage that Verizon and or AT&T would like does it have to be macro cell? Can it be more micro cell? Like, what brought you to the conclusion that we needed this particular solution to achieve the coverage?
The small cells that we describe in New Canaan are, again, utility mounted antennas. They are approximately 30 feet above the ground. They have a very small coverage footprint. Again, designed primarily to provide capacity relief to the existing networks. They just have don't have a large enough area to provide any significant coverage in these areas. The other thing they tend to do is, they are down below the tree line, so they are impacted by existing vegetation in those areas. They are a solution in discrete locations when there's a discrete need, either for a capacity relief or a coverage hole. But they are not the answer when we're looking to provide service to a large land area like we are in northern New Canaan. You could build dozens, hundreds, I suppose, small cells along Ponus Ridge Road. It becomes an issue of economics, whether you want to do that. You've got problems with small cells because they are dependent upon above ground utilities, electricity, fiber, et cetera. There's no backup power supply to small cells. So and again, there's only an opportunity to use utility poles on the existing roadways, and it doesn't penetrate much beyond those roadways. So it's not an answer for the large area coverage that is needed in New Canaan, which is why you build these macro cell sites on towers tall enough to get above the tree line that can provide you with, I think I mentioned earlier, 11.5 square miles of coverage around the site at the neg 85 dBm RSRP, or nearly 30. I'm sorry, I said 11 miles. It's about 3 square miles around the site, and about 6.5 square miles around the site at the neg 95 dBm coverage strength. So small cells have a place, but they don't provide that large area coverage that we're trying to achieve here in New Canaan.
Thank you.
And the other thing, two really quick questions. One, so you're talking about macro cell, microcell, we have their antennas. Is there any new technology that's out there that could be utilized in place of either of these technologies? Or are you saying that this is the latest and greatest that can be used today?
I think all of the wireless carriers, certainly in Connecticut, are using the latest and greatest state-of-the-art technology to provide this type of service.
And that last question is for, I know that, it's 4G, it's 2G, then it was 4G, and then we're getting 5G. How does that, because so that's newer technology, right? So 5G is coming on, or it is here, but I know that that's slightly different, the way it works versus 4G. So how does that newer 5G technology, how does that affect how we're looking at this as well in terms of the monopines and even the microcells? Like how does that affect the coverage, and how will it affect it going forward?
Shiva, you want to address that question?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. This is Shiva Gadastu, RF engineer from Verizon Wireless. So yeah, speaking about 5G technology. So 5G technology is on higher frequencies, much higher than 4G. So the concept is the higher the frequencies are, the shorter the distance they travel. So as 5G is much higher frequency than 4G, they cover much shorter distance.
So how does that affect, I'm sorry, so I understand that. So how does that affect the, where the microcells are placed now, where the monopines are placed and where they would be placed? Would we need more with the newer technology? Would we need less? Like, how is that going to affect our?
So yes, as you said, 5G is coming, but it's just to speak about 4G, it took quite a long time to get to this place. So speaking about 5G, it does take longer than what we can think of. So it just to get coverage from 4G standpoint, we are struggling to fill in the gap. So coming to 5G, it will be more tougher, and we might need more locations for 5G, but it will be way.
You're saying we might need more. We might need even more locations.
Yes,
we
as
implement
I
5G.
said before, so as 5G is much higher frequency, so it travels much much shorter distance than 4G.
Do you want to, I don't know, Kevin, you wanted to
Well,
add
what's going
something?
on with 5G is they're focusing on the cities. For example, the city of Dallas is going to have 10,000 5G antennas.
Mhm.
Right? It's a different, it's a more intense coverage because it has, it's like a super highway compared to the 2-lane highways of these 4Gs. That's kind of what they compare it to. So, and I've been told, the past few years, we're not going to see 5G for a decade in New Canaan. Every new macro site will have 5G on it, but it doesn't expand the coverage because 5G because it's shorter signals or it doesn't go as far. For example, they've said, 5G covers the size of a football field.
Right.
How many football fields are there in New Canaan? Right. So again,
So you're saying the better solution right now for a place like New Canaan where the topography is the way it is and it is 4G is the better solution than 5G. So it wouldn't be something that we would be moving toward anytime soon because of that. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
That's right.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you, Rita.
Thank you.
Tom.
Maria, did you
Oh,
want to go?
Maria, were you first?
I did have
Missed you.
a
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, go,
comment
Maria.
about the coverage map that was done with a drive test in 2014. Is that,
Yeah, John Keating, who did the study, is on. If you want to, whenever you want to hear from him,
does that coverage, can that coverage change, say, as phones improve? Like, is there a way to update that coverage study?
one of the things that people are confused by, their phone will tell them that they're on 5G. I think it's kind of a marketing ploy for
Well,
the
I
carrier.
know my phone works better than the phone I had 2 years ago. So no tower went on. I don't know.
So let's have Tom ask one question. We'll kick it up to John and let him go. Tom, what do you have?
Well, actually, two real quick ones. True or false, Ray? If the goal was merely to provide super gold standard service to West School, that is viable for a small cell, right? Or a booster strategy, right?
Sure.
Because that's such a
Yeah,
confined,
if
that's doable.
if we put a 5G antenna on the top of West School, that would cover around West School, about the size of a football field.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily talking about 5G, but
Right.
we could improve that. But you have a much broader scope of a goal.
Correct.
But
The whole is much larger than just the West School.
Right.
It's Ponus Ridge, it's Weed Street, it's Carriage, Llewellyn, it's
Yeah.
Wackamy Road.
The other one is, I don't think we can't blow by Hillary's question about 1837. Prove to us that 1837 wouldn't cover the needs in the West School area. How do we know that?
Well, that,
Ken explained earlier that New Canaan is 22.5 square miles. The island of Manhattan is 22.8 square miles, right? And these signals only go so far. So when you see that expansion from around, right, that's about 1.5 miles.
How far is it from West School to 1837?
3-4 miles.
So that you can't do 2.2?
well, this map shows the coverage from 1837 Ponus as the New Canaan Northwest 2 site. That's where Ray's cursor is now. And you can still see the area around West School that has no coverage at all, as well as some, areas where the green, the neg 95 in vehicle coverage is picks up a little bit in there, given the topography, but it doesn't fill that hole. Now this is computer generated because the 1837 Ponus Ridge doesn't exist yet. But these were the maps that were presented, or the information that was presented to the Siting Council. I would venture a guess that AT&T's maps, which are part of that application, show something very similar to this. And those are available, by the way. I think, Ray, those are probably available and something we could get in the town's hands. AT&T's comparable coverage maps that were a part of the docket 509 application.
It's on the Siting Council's website.
That's correct. AT&T was the applicant for 1837 and their coverage maps are included in the Siting Council's documents.
When were those documents dated? Are they 2014 also?
No, that they're within the last year. The coverage maps for AT&T for 1837, they'll show what 1837 would provide them at 100 and I guess they're at 106 feet on that tower.
I think that the 2014 maps that you might be referring to are the ones that the town did as a part of its coverage study.
Yeah, these plots before you were prepared recently by Verizon. These are not the old centerline plots that were done in 2014. And I think, again, John Keating can speak to the
Yeah,
need
we're not-
here in 2022 versus 2014.
We'll have John next. Anybody else?
One really
have-
quick question.
And
I
one.
have a question.
All right, we'll do Kim first, and
Okay.
then Rena.
Hi, I've been to the site twice and I have an AT&T phone. I was able to get coverage. So following up on the AT&T question, it's my understanding that the town responders and the first responders have Verizon. Is that the case? Or do they have AT&T as their carrier?
Most of our first responders have Verizon. They can have either.
They
Our
can have either?
Our ambulances have both. Right, yeah, they're for their data supply because they know areas where they won't get one or the other or get none. So, but ironically, most of our first responders have Verizon because Verizon is known to have better coverage in the Northeast,
I see.
except for towns like New Canaan.
And we'll get to the first
Yeah.
responders.
really-
But,
really
but
quick,
if we wanted to switch to AT&T with that first net, you talked about a first net kind of service that they have a contract with Homeland Security. The town could in fact switch to AT&T.
We could
for the
switch to
first responders.
we could switch to AT&T, but the first responders can explain why they carry for Verizon. So
All right, one last one, Rena.
Really quick, the equipment that is currently at Waveney, the macro cell that is at Waveney, is that the same technology that is being proposed for this particular location at Winfield?
yeah, the carriers upgraded their antennas when they took them off to paint the water tank. So a year and a half ago, I think most of the carriers upgraded their equipment.
Does this say it would be the same equipment?
Same equipment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good question. All right, so we have John on, right?
Yeah. John Keating is with Telemountain Engineering now. He was previously with Center Line Solutions, which was hired by the town to perform a drive test and a report. That report, which is about this thick, has their independent evaluation of where the coverage gaps were and the analysis of which properties that the town owns and certain other properties that they were given by Tom Teslick at the time. So John, could you give a summary of your updated report of New Canaan based upon your review of what Verizon gave you?
Sure. Can you guys hear? Okay.
John, I have your presentation. Ray, if you want to stop sharing your screen. John, do you want me to pull up that PowerPoint that you sent over?
It doesn't really matter. Those are just talking points, and it sounds
Okay.
like it might be a little bit more back and forth, but I'll start kind of working through those and see where the conversation goes.
Okay.
So as Mr. Moynihan said, my name is John Keating. I was the original author of the wireless market study report for the town of New Canaan in 2014. Not only did I author the report, but I spent 3 or 4 days driving pretty much every road in your lovely town, and visited a number of sites. I feel like it's been 8 years, but I feel like I can still visualize a fair bit of what New Canaan looks like. My background is I have a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Colorado. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Colorado and in half a dozen kind of regional states around Colorado. I first got into the wireless industry in 1994, I believe, with Cellular One. So it's been about 28 years. My primary area of expertise is RF engineering, wireless site design. My current firm, Telemountain Engineering, primarily does A&E for wireless site designs. So Mr. Moynihan contacted me a week or so ago, and he asked if I could kind of refresh my memory on what the 2014 report looked like, And based on that, if the information was still relevant enough today to make it kind of a professional determination of need for Verizon's proposed site at West School. So the first thing to kind of talk about is what was the 2014 report all about, and it was a pretty comprehensive study of the existing wireless conditions within New Canaan, from all of the carriers and all of the technologies that were present at that time. So it's been what, 8 years? For some reason, I have the wrong duration in my slide here, but it's been about 8 years since that report was done, and a fair bit has changed over those 8 years. Many of the technologies that we collected data on in 2014, CDMA, Edge Data, which is a GSM data service, EVDO, which is kind of a CDMA related data service, UMTS, for the most part, all 2G, 3G technologies, those are all largely obsolete. And I'm not sure exactly what the status of those are. There might be some residual CDMA left in service, but for the most part, those are obsolete. And if they're not out of service today, they're going to be out of service soon. So primarily the technology, the only technology that we drove in 2014 that's still relevant today is LTE, which is, all of the carriers are sort of coalesced, not just in the United States, but internationally around LTE. And so to that extent, the data that we collected on the LTE bands is still relevant. There's been some change in the number of carriers that provide service in New Canaan. T-Mobile and Sprint are now one company. So there was potentially some advantage gained by combining those two networks. And Dish is kind of an emerging player. Not sure what the situation is with them in New Canaan. Primarily, there was a question earlier about what's coverage. Coverage comes in lots of people have lots of different opinions of what coverage is. But one thing that's somewhat indisputable is that in the last 14 years or so, the iPhone came out in 2007. And that really changed the landscape of what coverage implies when somebody buys a phone. When I first got into this business in 1994, the only application was placing or receiving a call. That was it. So it's pretty easy to define coverage in those terms. But with the evolution of smartphones over the past 10, 12, 13 years, coverage means different things to different people. And there are a number of apps that have become somewhat indispensable and the smartphone itself has become an indispensable tool for most of the public. So, you can't really talk about coverage, I don't think, in a comprehensive way without acknowledging the need for wireless data. And that's really what's kind of driving the evolution of wireless services and applications and the need for additional infrastructure. The other thing that's changed a bit in the last 8 years or so is the reliance that people have on their phones. So in 2014, there were let's see. There's a National Health Institute, part of the CDC. They do surveys every year, twice a year actually, on the number of people that rely on wireless as their sole means of communications at their home. In 2014, nationally, the percent of households that were wireless only stood at about 45%.
Hey, John, I hate to interrupt, but we've got to talk about local. No, national isn't really helping us here.
Yeah, well, I would assume that New Canaan probably isn't that different than the national average, but But I don't have numbers for New Canaan. I might be able to find some state numbers.
We skew a little higher than our national average. on-
No, Steve, it's the issue that people have given up their landlines, right?
Right.
And if you, in emergencies, if you don't have a landline, you have to rely upon cell.
Well, and that's one of the points that we want to get the emergency responders up here for, is to talk about what happens in a power outage. And I'm looking at the clock here, 7:15. I also want to hear from everybody in the room here. So we got to move along here. Anything else to add there, John?
I'll speed it up real quick here. So that percentage of the population that's wireless only in the household went from 45% to about 70% today. If you look at just households with children in them, that number's closer to 80%. So that, demonstrates the reliance that, the typical household has on reliable service. So, what hasn't changed in the past 8 years since that report was done? New Canaan is still a very challenging environment. The topography hasn't changed. It's still predominantly rolling hills, ridges, ridge lines, and dense vegetation. So it's a challenging environment to provide service in. The other thing that hasn't really changed much is the wireless infrastructure. Based on the information that was shared tonight, showing the towers that Homeland Tower is building, that they've built, that they're proposing to build, and that they're asking for permission on tonight. Those, for the most part, that's the most significant change. Those are the significant changes to the wireless infrastructure in the town, and only one of those sites is on air today. It sounds like that Northeast site has AT&T on it. So one of the outputs of the report that we did was to identify, summarize the service, identify parts of town that could benefit, who should benefit by with wireless infrastructure, and we evaluated dozens of properties, city-owned properties and whatnot, and boiled down to I don't know, somewhere around 4 or 5 site locations, and the West School was one of those locations. So even with the Homeland Tower in the Northeast, the Homeland Tower in the Northwest, based on the information that we collected at the time, the analysis we did at the time, we wouldn't expect towers located in those areas to change the need for the site at the West School.
Jonathan, thank you, Jonathan. John, thank you very much. We can come back to you with questions. We're gonna because we've been having we've got a room full of people. We also have some scouts here, so we're gonna do a quick pledge of allegiance. Oh, you're gonna go. Okay, good. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So are there any questions from the council to John before? Go ahead,
I
Christine.
would like to see a copy of the report, and I think it should be available to
It's
everyone.
on the website.
Okay.
Everything is on the website.
The old one or the new one?
The updated report?
It's not an updated report. He just gave you,
He just said he updated the report.
he just gave you his evaluation, his professional opinion of what the changes have been.
No, I'm sorry. It has to be put in writing.
It's on our tablets.
So just
Oh,
to wrap up, what can the public, Ray, just as far as the maps and all of that stuff, is that on the town website so far? We've got all that stuff up for the public consumption?
That's correct. All the coverage maps are on the town council's website.
Okay.
Let's be more specific.
Yeah, we need to tell people exactly where to go to see
On the
these.
homepage of the website. I've been sending emails.
Homepage of the town
Yeah.
website.
We've
Thank you.
received several emails with that.
There's a news item, center of the homepage, that has all of the information that you're talking about.
That's what you asked us to do.
That's right.
yeah, no, it is. It's good. There are, all the documents are there, just the updated reference to whatever we're discussing, the updated coverage information.
I feel like we didn't get an
Should go
answer to that, if it was actually updated or not. I'm not clear. I'm not clear on the answer to that question.
Well, again, we started 2 weeks ago to talk about an update, right?
Yeah.
That report cost $30,000 to come and drive the whole town. He's indicating without new infrastructure, the report remains valid. That's basically what he just told you. If you want to ask him questions to confirm that, that's what he's trying to tell you.
So we had asked that question at an earlier meeting, based on the 14 information and all of the new technology that's out there and the additional sites that we've installed, what does that change from that 14 survey? And
So in his opinion, it doesn't change much.
That's
his-
what, that's
his
what he
opinion.
just,
That's what he was trying to say. If you want to ask him further to elaborate on what he just said, because I think
I'd like to ask a question.
sure, Kim.
Could I ask John a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, John. My name is Kim Norton, Town Council. My understanding is that solutions to needs for wireless technology have changed considerably in the past 8 years. And there's carrier neutral solutions and other solutions, as well as the fact that cell tower growth or the building of cell towers is becoming, it's not a growth area. It's flattened out in terms of cell towers being the solution to the needs that you've identified. Could you address those points, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but I would say that from the 2014 market survey that we did, we boiled that down. The result of that was that we made recommendations on some number of locations that would benefit by additional macro infrastructure. Homeland Tower, then the city released a request for proposal. Homeland Tower won that request for proposal largely with a proposal that was largely based on filling the gaps in coverage that we identified at that time. So, you know, the question about whether or not the report was updated, no, there hasn't been an update of the report. But based on the fact that the RFP, the half dozen, 5 or 6 sites that were proposed in the Homeland RFP haven't been realized yet, it doesn't seem to me that we're kind of ready for that, you know, to move on to that next phase. The basic infrastructure just hasn't been put in place, in my opinion.
Okay, so my question was really about how technologies changed and how macro cells are not the solution, the only solution to something like this. And if you look at a graph of cell tower growth, that graph is flattening out, and there's other carrier neutral solutions that are different types of technology. So as an expert in this field, could you tell us a little bit about your opinion on that as a solution to the need that's been identified in the town?
Sure. I think from the need that the town faces right now is coverage. And if the need is coverage, you know, the macro site solution is the most feasible solution because it's because the magnitude of the coverage that can be provided by fewer locations. There are small cell designs. Sounds like Verizon has some small cells in use in New Canaan right now, and in dense urban areas, those are primarily a solution for capacity. Dealing with, you know, like the football stadium was mentioned earlier, right? When you got 80,000 people sitting in a stadium, you know, there might be 1,000 that are watching the game and 79,000 that are surfing the web on their phone. So the small cell solution is more oriented toward hotspot coverage, if you will, where there's a real congested demand for coverage. Small cell, macro cell are kind of the bookends of the coverage solutions. My personal opinion, having been to New Canaan and having driven most of the roads in the town, small cell solution would be, I don't think it's in the dozens. I think it's in the hundreds and maybe beyond to provide, you know, dense ubiquitous coverage in New Canaan. And that seems to be impractical. And I don't know of any other solutions that would get you the coverage that the town.
Thank you. Can you just address my question about the growth of cell towers being built? Is my research correct that growth is flattening and that there's other hybrid solutions, kind of a combination of macro, micro, different kinds of solutions? And are you aware of those solutions?
Well, if when you say that the number of towers being built is lessening, I can't disagree with that. It probably is less because there's less white space, let's call it, on the national map today than there would have been 25 years ago. But the number of small cells, if you consider them to be cell sites in their own regard, then yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily true, because there are, hundreds of small cells in some of these metropolitan areas, hundreds or even thousands of them that are being built. But yeah, macro cells, I think, once you've provided the basic infrastructure in an area, then the need for additional foundational infrastructure becomes less.
Thank you.
John, could you, let me just ask John a question. John, could you explain when you talk about capacity? It's the law of physics as to how many connections can be made with an antenna. Can you explain that?
Right. So capacity, basically, everything is data driven now, right? So the capacity on a channel, and please, the Verizon RF engineer would like to step in. I'm happy to yield, but higher level data demands and numbers of there's a finite amount of traffic, data traffic, that a channel can accommodate. And it's a combination of the number of users on the channel and the data demands that those users have. So in areas like we were discussing the small cells, in areas where there are going to be large gatherings of people, airports, stadiums, shopping malls, places like that, small cell in building solutions are a very efficient way to keep that demand off of the macro network.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, I guess my question's for Verizon. If I look at the demographics of the town, it's not that populated where this tower is going. So from a business standpoint, what's driving the need to put it there if the majority of the residents, or at least my impression is, don't really want a tower near them and seem to be content with service? What's the business proposition? Why are we putting a tower there? Is there some, and I understand the need down the road for 5G. Everyone's going to have an autonomous vehicle and that requires 5G and whatnot, but what's the business reason? What's the rationale from a business standpoint to put it there if the residents outside of first responders, I want to leave you all, that's a totally different topic.
And that's really Ken Bolden more than.
Yeah. So I guess my question is for Ken, what's the business proposition? Why are we doing it?
Well, it probably takes a couple of different angles. The FCC has issued a license to Verizon to provide service throughout the state of Connecticut. It does its best to provide ubiquitous service so that its customers can enjoy those services wherever they are, whenever they are. It's not just, while the hope would be that this would provide in-building service to folks living within the coverage footprint of any particular cell site, but it's also to provide service to those area roadways where people are traveling, maybe as they're traveling through New Canaan. Again, the goal is to provide that high-end ubiquitous service everywhere within the reaches of its licensed area, which in this case is the entire town of New Canaan. So it doesn't necessarily look at an area and say, well, there are only a few residents here, let's not bother. The goal is to provide that service to those residents, plus the roadways, plus the emergency service providers, all in an effort to make its service available to everyone. It's a competitive business, so the goal is to provide the most reliable network that it can provide, and it does that by making sure that areas like New Canaan, towns like New Canaan, have ubiquitous coverage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. So I'd like to get the first responders up, and then we're going to take public comment. So let's bring Russ, are you going to speak for?
They can go to the podium.
Podium. All right. Put that on though, so we'll see if it actually works. Does it work? Yes, it works.
Yes.
Splendid. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. I'm Russ Kimes, the Emergency Management Director for the town of New Canaan. I, along with the chiefs of fire, police, and EMS, and thank you to Fire Chief Albie Bassett, Commissioner Paul Foley, and EMS Captain Amy Kennedy for joining today. And thank you everyone for being here today on an important topic. We just wanted to reiterate the importance of comprehensive cellular coverage across New Canaan as a public safety priority in particular. As time and technology have advanced, cellular phones make up the grand majority of our notifications of emergencies. And I think it was alluded to before, the 70%. It also enables our first responders access to data. And I think that was a big part that was brought up before. Not just coverage to be able to talk on a phone, but be able to actually get data wirelessly is now integral to our operations in our efforts to save lives. And the statistics for 2021, and this is on the state of Connecticut website. You can actually go on and see 911 calls based on what's called the PSAP or Public Service Answering Point. So for New Canaan, for 2021, 6,127 calls came to our 911 answering point at the New Canaan Police Department. And of that, 70.3% were made on cell phones. It's also important, as we've learned in major storms and disasters, which unfortunately only seem to be occurring more regularly, an increasing percentage of our homeowners are relying on cellular phones in their own residences. An example, when the power fails, Optimum Voice largely becomes unavailable. Many residents are not aware that their telephones are now are voice over IP and not the old, what we call POTS or plain old telephone systems. And God bless you if you still have one. It's a wonderful thing because it's no data and they always work. That voice over IP phone, Optimum Triple Play, those sorts of things, is reliant upon having internet or your cable modem functional. And whether you may have a whole home generator in your house, so you have power in your own house, the internet on the street itself may not be working because those switches and boxes that drive the internet are driven off of the power off the poles, not from your home generator. So once that system goes down, a lot of folks aren't even aware that they won't have any means to communicate besides their cellular device. We've actually had a call, I remember, on the northeast end of town where someone had a possible structure fire. There was a power outage. They ended up getting in their car and driving, and we're extremely lucky that our rescue happened to be blocking a down power line call where they were able to call on the radio back to station to respond to their residents. That's an example. And I asked them, they were unable to get cellular service. So they started driving towards town until they could get it. This was a while ago though, and so what this means is in many cases, the only means that people in distress have to get help is via cell phone, right? The same goes with the Merritt Parkway or any of our roads. We get notifications fairly regularly of car accidents and things way out in the sticks and in the north end of town where we would never notified otherwise, or the vehicle, especially now as it's modern, via data, not just cellular data, notifies us through things like OnStar, things like the crash avoidance systems. So these cellular the other thing that's important to note here is these cellular networks are also the backbone of a lot of our first responder tools. This technology has changed for us as first responders. So we are reliant now on data ourselves to do our jobs. I'll give you an example. The police cars have mobile data terminals. The fire trucks have mobile data terminals, and EMS have mobile data terminals. It was alluded to before. I know EMS actually carried both internet providers. The reason being is that service was so bad, we were hoping you'd get one of the two. And that was why they kept them. And the kind of data that they're getting, EMS is using it for patient updates, sensitive information that they can't say over a radio, which isn't encrypted, things like garage door codes to be able to gain access to a building. Police use it obviously to do registration and criminal background checks and processing traffic stops or whatever else. And then, fire, we rely on it for a lot of information or metadata for us to be able to respond to emergencies. I'll hold an app up. This is an app we use called I Am Responding. There's a number of them we use, which requires data, whether it's by wireless or by cellular. And I hate to say as soon as we leave town hall or the fire department, we're relying upon that cellular data. And we are able to see, as we're responding, every single fire hydrant, water source, where the keys are, what we call Knox box, the points of entry, where electrical shutoffs are, where the sources of water or ponds or lakes that we can draft from. This is entirely dependent on having a data connection. I've been trying to get the vendor to have it so we can save it locally on our devices, but that is also challenging because it's a lot of data, right? And it becomes difficult for us. So data in particular is also used to notify our first responders of an emergency. Our primary means of communication is our public safety radio system, which is totally separate. We maintain it ourselves. It's a data system. But we also send text to our volunteer fire and EMS to notify them, as well as our career staff. And we also send via the same app I showed you a notification. If they're out in town and about, the only way they're going to know that is if they have that cellular data connection. So as I said, all of this is dependent on a strong and redundant cellular network, which is why our first responder agencies support these efforts to increase cellular coverage and in particular redundancy, right? And not having one cell tower covering town, but having that layered and overlap. So if one goes down because a generator fails or whatever else, that we have that coverage. So,
Thank you, Russ.
and we have the agencies here if people have questions in particular.
Question for Russ while we have him?
Quick question.
Yeah.
How is this not covered by, like, for instance, the antenna on West School, or I know there was an emergency antenna at a house on Owen Oak, for instance, or so how are these needs not met by those? How can we not meet the needs that you guys need with those specific antennas?
So I am not an engineer, so I will not. So if I sit
I'm not
misspeak,
either.
but
so
based
we
on
can
my
dump this
layman's
down, way
understanding,
down.
our radio system for public safety is at 155 megahertz, which is a lower frequency than, say, a cell phone, which is up in the gigahertz range. Whereas the lower the frequency, the less data works. So our systems, we don't transmit data using our first responder radio system. We have switched to digital where it's able to do some basic identifiers. For example, if a firefighter goes down, they can hit an emergency button and it'll send a code out so we can see it on a display. But it's not something that's driving a cell phone, right? The same reason they're saying that 5G is faster. Well, it's a higher frequency. We're down on a lower frequency right now. Is it possible we could build our own network that would be able to do it? Sure. Then we'd need cell towers or radio towers again at that frequency. So our radios aren't used to do data.
So the antenna, sorry, just, I didn't mean to interrupt,
Yeah.
but are the antenna that we currently have up, the emergency antenna, those are for your radios?
Yeah, the
That's
first
not for
responder
the,
radio.
that's not for the data that, the cellular data that you're
Correct.
using right now.
And the benefit of an additional tower, whether it's West School or wherever it is we always get the right to put our public safety radio on those towers.
In
And that's
addition, okay.
incredibly important because if you're, I'll give you an example. I've been this person, a firefighter in the basement of a burning building. You want to be able to have that thing hit something and be able to talk to somebody on the outside. So wherever we get the chance, we're adding those radio antennas to these cell sites.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Question.
Yeah.
Hi, Russ. Have you done an analysis of the best cell phone carrier for the the emergency responders? And have you contemplated or thought about paying for hotspots for each phone that the town has? Because I know I did this for someone in my family that needed a lot of data due to investment banking work and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we paid for extra service so that they could get faster and they had, more ability to download quicker and things like that. So have you done an analysis of that to see if that would help the emergency response and coverage and things?
So I'll break it into parts because I can only speak from my knowledge from my years as a volunteer with the fire department. We've used Verizon, which is the town provider. It's always been one or the other. One works in one part of town, one doesn't work in the other part of town. I'm not aware of a comprehensive analysis by the first responder agencies in that regard. But when you said hotspot, a hotspot still requires cellular data to work. So we could have all the hotspot devices plugged into our laptops or plugged into the trucks we want. And in fact, that's actually basically what we have in the trucks now. In the fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances are mobile modems, which are based on cellular, usually 4G. And that's what allows us to do all of this data transmission. So it is basically hotspots that we have currently, but we have gaps in coverage.
In terms of capacity, though, if you had AT&T, you have FirstNet, so you would have the ability to get coverage before anyone else in this, if there was an emergency or storm or whatever.
Verizon offers a
Curious
similar
why
program.
you guys haven't switched.
Verizon offers a similar program. I actually personally have FirstNet myself. I was, I think, one of the first adopters to it because I thought it was a great concept. And after 9/11, it took them a long time to get there and running. But Verizon, while they don't, I think it was said previously, while they don't have the contract with Homeland Security for, I think it's band 12, band 13, I can't remember the exact frequency, but they also have a similar program where you get preemption and those sorts of things on Verizon, which I believe the town is signed up for.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'd like to just suggest before we move ahead to vote on this or that we get a report also from first responders just to see what's out there, rather than saying this is the only solution, because I know one of the needs is that you guys have better coverage. So if you had a different carrier or you had different ways of getting coverage, I just feel like to base it all on you guys having Verizon and us having to make that decision as the reason that we need to do this, it doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, I think we said that the ambulances have both AT&T and Verizon. And I mean, so if we were to do, and I'm happy.
About fire, I'm talking about fire and police in terms of data downloads.
Yeah, I mean, we could, in essence, what we would come up with is finding out that if it was one or the other was better, I think they're going to have roughly similar coverage. I can't speak to that empirically. I'm not an engineer and I don't know the maps of whether AT&T or Verizon is better. I mean, we don't have engineers ourselves. So I mean, the only way we'd be able to do it is to drive around with our cell phones and try to get the data to work. But that means we would also need to purchase AT&T cellular modems so that we could compare fairly. The only other options I can think of, and I'm open to suggestions. I don't know if there's any other. Those are the main carriers that I'm aware of that are available in town.
All right, thank you, Tom.
So Russ, near and dear to my heart. So if I had to pick one question
Yes.
that's as important as everything else that we talked about, I think is in the current system, are we able to provide gold standard safety in the event of a school invasion at West School?
West School's tough because I will say just from my own personal experience and just carrying an AT&T and a Verizon cell phone, when I was inside of the building doing the school safety assessment, I was unable to get signal out. And now that's just my own experience. And it was that particular phone. So, but that being said, that was my own personal experience. And the biggest thing is you want to have redundant coverage from both of them, right? The only reason I'll say that is, God forbid you have an active shooter, a situation like that, where it's inside a building, which means that it's got concrete walls and all the reduction, right, and signal strength. You want them to be able to get out on any carrier if there's an active shooter to alert the first responders to start moving immediately. On any carrier, not you should just have AT&T or Verizon because that's what we've preferred in town or what we've has better coverage.
Thank you. Any other questions for Russ while we have him? Russ, one of the things that may be helpful is, at the next time we get together, real world experiences in that area that you guys can come up with the different, between police, fire, EMS, in the area we're talking about. Come back and tell us, on this date, we had this call, I want to hear specifics as far as this got in the way of you guys doing your job.
It's tricky because
and the other part of that is the follow-up to say, there was a moment where a storm where we had a fire truck that was stranded overnight in this town as a result of have we solved all that type of issue? We're not going to run into a situation where we've got a crew of your guys out there in a storm somewhere where we don't have coverage. I mean, are we covered now fully in this town, or do we still have holes?
I mean, based on my experience, I still have situations where I'm at scenes and I can't get data. I can get a call out, but I can't speak more accurately than the professionals with the RF engineers and the site surveys and stuff like that. I'm happy to explore with the chiefs to see if we can get a comprehensive list of incidents. The problem is we don't really, we don't keep a log of the phone didn't work that day.
even from memory. I mean,
yeah, 100%. I can certainly ask. Absolutely. I can ask the chiefs.
Thank you.
Approximately 3 years ago today, we had a fire on Vance Highway where the homeowner, who lost his entire house, had to go out and drive. Didn't he have to go?
Yeah, I think that was, I was out of town that week.
We all saw the fire. We all saw it burning, and my husband and I ran down to make sure that the phone call had been placed immediately, which it had. And I want to say that last time I was here, I said to Mr. Moynihan that I stood next to a first responder who was a firefighter. We had multiple trucks, from all the other neighborhoods. Everybody was there. We had plenty of firepower. But what I did is I stood next to the firefighter as he waited for the water to come out of the pond. Why? Because there is no fire hydrant. When I was
ma'am, we have to maintain order.
Place on Dan's Highway.
Thank you. All right, Russ.
So noted. I will take that to the chiefs and see if we can get a good list of based off of people's recollection. Like the one I remembered was just my memory, and we can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Christina, last
But it
question.
has to be a newer list, not what happened 14 years
Yeah,
ago.
I mean, and that's the trick, right? Our call.
Do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
I was on a call on Valley Road where I was trying to reach the patient's family member.
Amy, it would be helpful. Can you get up to the mic and just?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not comfortable with public speaking.
I know.
Hi, I'm
Thank you
Amy
for coming.
Kennedy. I'm with New Canaan EMS. I have been since about 1988, a resident in town since the mid 70s. So pretty familiar with how our community works and happy to be here. I had a call on Valley Road a couple of years ago where I had an injured individual who needed a family member immediately. I had to go from Valley all the way up to 123 by Michigan Road before I had cell service to make that call. And this was critically important.
Okay.
That's why.
Amy, you're this way.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions for Amy while we have her?
The question was how far back?
So how far back do you want us to go?
Yeah.
You know,
I would
10
say-
years, 5 years?
I would say 5 years or less.
We can look at some of our data. Thank you.
Amy, thank you for everything you guys do. You are the best deal in town by far. And I'll say that a million times.
Steve, to that point, and we're talking about emergency service right now, but I think it'd be interesting to find out from the residents too. I mean, personally, I have had calls drop and I have had problems. I have Verizon, so I don't have AT&T, but I've had a lot of problems and a lot of drop calls. It'd be interesting to know though, New Canaan wide, like not just EMS, but people in general, if they've
Right.
had these issues.
Well, I mean, the Ponus Ridge area has always been where everybody says, hey, I'm coming down the road, I'm gonna lose you. And, you know, it's just a known spot. So that's at least for Verizon.
Yeah.
We know that.
And I guess the question is, and I want to get to the public, so I won't belabor it, but again, I'm still struggling with this balance, like what's the need? Are people willing to trade the annoyance of dropped calls? Is it an annoyance or is it a critical safety issue? And would you trade that annoyance for a cell tower going up within 1,000 feet of your elementary school? So
Agreed.
I
but it
just
should be
want
the
to,
broad
I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to have, a million people come up and say, every time I'm on Ponus, I drop a call and it's really annoying. Like, is that what?
Maybe
we're
a survey,
doing? I
maybe a
mean,
survey.
but guys, what are we weighing here? I mean, that's what I want to understand. What is the need that we're trying to define? Versus what is it the annoyance of a dropped call? Is it the safety need? We keep talking about this need. What is the need?
Well, that's why we're meeting tonight.
Yeah,
Hillary.
exactly. But
That's why
we're,
meeting.
an hour and
Oh,
45
we're-
minutes into
we're-
it. And I feel
Listen,
like
we do things in this town, we do things thoroughly and we do things really slowly.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I'm getting that picture, but.
All right, Robin.
No, it's been an hour, 45 minutes. Can we get to public? comment?
Yes, that's on. Let's
Yes,
go.
please.
Can we have the list? Can we have the list up here for the public? Anybody else want to sign in on this sheet that hasn't signed in to speak? Happy to get you on the list. So yeah, we're going to time this to be fair. It's going to be 2 minutes as we've always done. 2 minutes up there. And obviously we want to try to keep this focused, as we've said, on need. What we covered tonight, we will have another meeting, obviously, on health, but the need and the coverage is really what we want to hear about. So. Right here. And if you haven't been to one of our meetings, if you just introduce yourself and tell us where you live. And we don't need to know that much more about who you are, but just want to name, address, home address. And again, thank you for all coming. I know it's been an hour and 45 minutes, but we really needed to do some of the background. And we'll have other opportunities to speak as well. So. Got it. All right.
So who's first up, Steve?
First up is Connie Boville. I'm upside down. Connie? Hi, Connie. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Howard Boville. I live on 36 Hemlock Hill Road. I've been building telecommunications networks since 1991. I currently run one of the biggest clouds in the world and connect autonomous vehicles together. So I'm being very surprised by the way this meeting is ran. The whole purpose of the meeting was to assess need for the town. All I've heard so far is the need for Verizon and the coverage maps that don't give us a sense as to where we have coverage for this. The thing that I'm really interested in is the actual needs of the emergency services. And we've tagged them on to the end of this meeting. And we've got anecdotal information that would be tremendously helpful for us to all understand, in addition for them to take away the questions that have been asked, for them to better understand their need. They are the primary elements of this, as opposed to what Verizon's needs are. We wasted a good 20 minutes listening to somebody from Colorado talk about a report that was done in 2014. The technology then is profoundly different, both in terms of how the actual technology is transmitted, but also the devices that you hold in your hand. And also the communication network. A question I do have for the emergency services is, why aren't they using FirstNet? Because FirstNet doesn't just use cellular technology, it uses satellite technology on the basis that if the cellular technology doesn't work, you can connect to a satellite and get your connectivity through that. It is not equivalent to Verizon. It's a different type of technology. And that now is a more pressing concern as a resident of the town, that I wasn't aware that our emergency services weren't using that capability. The point that was mentioned about the use of apps, and that's very much a prevalent thing that people use on their phones, but I would certainly hope they're not using them whilst they're driving. And that's the only area where you actually have issues in terms of the connectivity, as being pointed out in the various sessions. As it relates to Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi does connect you to the 911 services. There is an issue if you lose the power to your home, but we need to look in terms of where the coverages are for all the carriers, not just AT&T, but also T-Mobile. I use T-Mobile because it actually gives me better coverage in this town. And in a 911 call, it routes to the only available network. It doesn't route to the network that you as a customer subscribe to. So if you're a Verizon customer and you call 911, it will route to where you have signal, whether that's AT&T, T-Mobile, and Dish as that starts to come online. So this has been a meeting of 1 hour and 45 of very little data and very little facts.
Connie,
which
that's
we can
two.
make a decision on need.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, as we say, we can hold our applause. Mark Alfieri, Ponus Ridge.
Hi, my name is Mark Alfieri. My wife and our 2 children live on 1358 Ponus Ridge. We absolutely have no service at our house in Ponus Ridge. The tower in the northwest of town hopefully will actually address that problem. But to the point that was just made, a 911 call was placed from my house and was actually got into town when we lost power. We specifically moved to New Canaan for the excellent schools, among various other reasons. The very last thing I was ever concerned with in regards to New Canaan was the town officials would be entertaining putting a 145-foot monopine cell tower behind the school that my children will one day attend. I am deeply concerned and puzzled that anyone representing the town's residents' best interests would ever be okay with the optics of putting a structure with even the slightest potential of negative or harmful side effects right next to the elementary school. Our officials need to propose other alternatives to this problem. If we were put to a vote, I actually believe this agenda would fail miserably. In fact, why not vote on this? It's shameful that any of our elected officials would ever entertain leasing land to do this project in such close proximity to 2 of our greatest assets, our kids and our schools. New Canaan can do better and should do better to find a better solution to the problem without sacrificing our children's safe place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Barbara Wills.
Very low tech. I have visual aids. Physical ones.
Barbara, we got 2 minutes.
I know.
That's a lot for 2 minutes.
Did I just hit something? I mean, I think that this is just fine right here. Okay. It's very fast because I wrote it down. I didn't want to just keep to it. This meeting is about the proposed cell tower behind West School. The best illustration of changes in technology is a little history. This Nokia phone was the one I used when we moved to New Canaan in 2010. You could text if you pushed all the little numbers till the numbers came up and you could get your point across, or you could make a phone call. There was no dictation function, no interaction with the car. This was how you took still pictures. This is how you took videos. This is how you listen to music. Now, I can't pick it up, but that's the computer. Now, the phone that I have, which unfortunately I didn't bring up here, does all of this all at once. So to say that technology has not changed since I moved here in 2010, the cell antennas are better. The cell phones are better. We don't necessarily need what is best for a certain company's business model. Just yesterday, Apple came out with the notification that anybody who has an iPhone 14 or younger will be able to make an SOS satellite call. Now, I don't know a lot of people who have cell phones that are 8 years old. I know that this collection of telephones that I have here have all rendered service to me, and now they are done, and I use something better. We can do better for our town. Let's embrace the future.
Thank you,
The best
Barbara.
way we-
You get a 10 for props.
And you hit 2 minutes right on the dot.
Matt Morrow. Welcome, Matt.
Matt Morrow, 378 Frogtown. I was actually coming just to learn tonight, but I did sign up in case I wanted to speak, so I'll take it 10 seconds. One, we've had 2 EMS calls to our house on Frogtown. Both went through, both worked perfectly, and great support from our EMS staff. So we're in that trouble zone, but yet it still all worked. And secondly, as I just think about the maps and the area, what I'd like answered is, what is the need in that area? I look at that little hole of lack of service, and that strikes me as the Rayton Riverbed, the back of Irwin, and more limited homes. So that's what I want to understand, is that looks like kind of a dead zone of not much service need anyways. You know, if coyotes need cell phones, then great, but I don't think they do. So I really didn't feel like this was on the list or couldn't be addressed via some of the smaller micro models. So that's what I want to learn more about. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Steven Schmitz. Steve, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Hi, my name is Stephen Schmitz. I moved to New Canaan in 1975. I'm a resident of Bayberry Road. I have 2 young boys, both went to West School. I also represent my mother, Janet Schmitz, who lives at 110 Winfield Lane, the house that this will loom over. And I would like to correct for the record, in the P&Z meeting, I mistakenly misestimated her age. She is 30. Okay, I got a lot of grief for that, so it's not corrected on the record. I will go to the needs section of my talk since you want to talk about needs. Needs is a sales pitch. I took the Xerox sales skills course. You uncover the need, you demonstrate how your product satisfies the need. That is how you sell something. I appreciate the public safety nature of it, but I just can't help but feel like I'm being sold that we need it for public safety. And as has just been pointed out by several people, there's really not a lot of occurrences of calls not going through. So that's about what I have to say about needs. So I will switch then to another need, which is the need to take care of the environment. Putting a cell tower in the deep woods at the end of Winfield Lane, surrounded by wetlands, sounds like something they would do in the 60s or 70s. And it makes me think of, remember the ad with the Indian crying when you looked at the pollution? What would Ponus, Sagamore, the Ripmong say if he walked through the woods and saw some looming industrial radio frequency generator? He would cry just like that Native American cried when he saw pollution. And you know, this is a business. I don't understand why the town is aligned with commercial entities. This is a processing plant that takes in electricity and sells radio frequencies, and it sells data. It's a business. And why not put a charging station there? Why not a gas station? Why not anything? Why doesn't the town put businesses all over the place? Because the town's not a commercial entity. It should represent the wishes of its constituents, I think, and the citizens. And I think as you heard tonight, and as you go around town and talk to people, you probably won't find a lot of residents who are for this cell phone tower. The only resident I've heard for a cell phone tower like this is the guy who's paid to have it in his yard. And quite honestly, when he argued that it would not hurt real estate values, I consider that to be evidence that it causes brain damage. Because Who the hell can argue that this will not damage the real estate value of my home, my family home on 110 Woodfield Lane? We've lived for 45 years. We handcrafted that cul-de-sac from nothingness. It was a dead end, an ugly dead end. And you know what? If we really wanted to, we could probably use the law of adverse possession to claim ownership of that cul-de-sac, because we've enjoyed open and outward enjoyment of it for over 40 years. And let me tell you, the town never came and mowed the lawn or blew the leaves over there. I did. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Janie Hunter. Welcome, Janie.
I'll keep this short because tonight's supposed to be about need. I'm Janae Hunter. I live at 70 Bennington House Place. I'm one of the houses that shows up on that map. I'm 498 feet from the proposed tower. I get emotional even thinking about this tower being that close to my home. And that's from the home. It's 150 feet from my property line. So this is an emotional issue for me. I also had 3 kids go through West School. I volunteered my time, was a class mom. I can't even tell you how many times. I led the volunteer program at the library. And I'll tell you, there's not good cell service inside of West School. It's a brick building with storm windows and it's hard. You go out to the playground, you can make a phone call. I live there. I work from home. I am on the phone literally all day long and my cell coverage is fine. It's fine when I have to go run and pick up my kids and stay on calls. I drive to the high school. I drive 2 Saks. I drive back to my house. I don't lose coverage. And I have Verizon, so I'm in the hole or the donut. So I do not see the need. If the need is for emergency services, the iPhone 14 and above moving forward is going to allow anyone in West School who has an iPhone 14 above, and this will be 2 years from now. By then, almost everyone in the West School will have an iPhone 14 or above, can make a call via satellite. I watched the demonstration. You can pull it up. It's on CNN today on the news. It solves it. It solves it for anyone who's in the dip. I've also been doing research on cell towers. Cell towers do not solve topography problems. They don't solve the dips. Frogtown Road, the low part, it's a bad coverage. The low part of Wahakimis, there's bad coverage. The cell tower, by their own admission, if you read their websites, say, yeah, we can't really solve the dips. So I don't know what we're solving and I don't know what we're accomplishing here. This to me seems, like someone is pushing an agenda and I'd like to understand why. Also, I want to be clear because I don't think the town even knows what they're proposing because I'm hearing town council talk about a monopine. I'm understanding now, and according to his diagram he put it tonight, it's a metal cell tower that's 145 feet tall. It's not even being disguised anymore. It's on a 2,500-foot concrete slab with generators, propane tanks. It's 500 feet from the back playground of the school. And it's 145 feet of metal. And by the way, the water tower is 65 feet. So we're over twice the height of the water tower. And you're saying we can't see it? I just want us to really at least get the right facts out there. And these meetings are frustrating me that we're having one at a time. I appreciate the idea, but the problem with that is everyone can't come because we can't keep coming. I spent 3 hours at the P&Z meeting and never got to speak because I had to go pick up a daughter at 9 p.m. finally. And also people don't know what they're fighting. Some of the maps say it's 845 feet from school. Some say 900. Before Kevin Moynihan said it was 1,000. Could we at least clarify for the public what the proposal is?
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Elizabeth Langdale. Elizabeth. Next up is Anjali. Thank you.
Elizabeth, what's your last name? Could everybody repeat their name? Because you're announcing it while people are clapping and I'm not getting anybody's name.
We'll take a picture of this and share it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That's even better. Thank you.
Yeah, I need a copy of that list, Steve.
Thank you.
So my last name is Langdale.
Thank you.
I live at 95 Bennington Place, also one of the houses that shows up on the map. I have a daughter who's in 2nd grade at West School and a 3-year-old son who's currently at Playland Nursery School and will eventually be attending West School. I personally take great offense to this particular cell plot being called a puzzle piece, as I think Mr. Baldwin referenced during his speech today. I think that because of the nature of this plot, I think because of the great cost to the students, and we're not going to talk about health today, it can't be considered as such. I think we need to really clarify what it is that this particular plot provides in terms of coverage. I had a lot I wanted to say, but I think I'd rather use my 2 minutes to just talk about a few of the things that were said today that I think need a little bit extra digging. The first was this coverage map area. Obviously, it's quite dated. It's from 2014. The numbers that are used, and I'm not an expert on any of this, so I'm not going to get it right, to determine whether an area was green or blue were decided by Verizon. This -85 being the blue, the -95 being the green. What happens at -96? What happens at -97? Why are these particular cutoffs being used? And I imagine that when you get from 95 and then you get into the white area, it's not 0. And Mr. Baldwin also said, oh, all of those white areas, you have no coverage. That's simply not true. And it's not true based on the numbers that they gave us today. So I think we need to dig into that a little bit further. The next thing I would want to sort of just pick apart from today is that this 75% of all 911 calls coming from cell phones. I think that if those are being called from the home, then they're on wireless networks. It's not 75% of all 911 calls are coming from a road or outside of the home. I think that's another sort of flawed statistic that we're being given, obviously as a part of a sales pitch. And I think one of the most interesting things that we're hearing is that depending on what question you're asking, we're getting entirely different answers about what these certain cell towers provide. If you're asking, what is this West Tower going to offer? Oh, 3 miles of blue coverage, 6 square miles of green coverage. You need this because it's going to fill the donut hole. But when you ask the question, well, what happens? Why doesn't the 1837 Ponus Tower cover this school? Well, because these things just don't work that great. You need a lot of them. You need 1 million of them. That's 2.2 miles from the donut hole, and yet it apparently doesn't work. So I think we have to be really careful about the questions that we're asking and really pay very close attention to the answers that we're being given, because it feels like a big sales pitch. And I just want to thank you all, because it finally feels like, as a townsperson, there are people sort of in the room making decisions that are taking our concerns a little bit more seriously. It's clear that Verizon and Homeland have a partner in this who's a powerful member of our town.
Elizabeth, that's too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Angeli, up next. And after Angeli, we have Betty Lavastek.
Hi, I'm Angeli. I live at 106 Bennington Place. I'm speaking here today in strong opposition to the West School Tower. I have 3 children who are currently at West School. And this cell tower is being proposed in a location that has cell service. Some of you have said that you were at the site visit and phones were ringing. I was able to send text messages, and the P&Z site visit meeting minutes also mentioned that cell phones were ringing. So why is there a need for a cell tower at this particular location? I understand the concern for public safety and the need to call 911. And according to the FCC website, their basic rules require wireless service providers to transmit all 911 calls to a public safety answering point, which is dispatch, regardless of whether the caller subscribes to the provider's service or not. So you would be able to make 911 calls using your mobile phones, whether you have service. And in 2018, a public safety radio antenna was installed at West School to improve public safety communications. This was part of a townwide public safety radio improvements project. So is there really a need for a cell tower at this particular location? The two-way radio is what this West School staff uses for communication. It's also what first responders use to respond and communicate during an emergency. They use it to communicate within their agency and also across agencies. I am a volunteer EMT, and this is how we know when we're getting an EMS call. We listen to the police radio, and we know that there will be an EMS call before the tone goes off. And the radio is much faster than the cell phone. You can if you're in an emergency, you can tell your peers, simultaneously within seconds. The information that's on the mobile data terminal and the iPad is useful. But the dispatcher also tells us through the radio any information that we need to know. Also, any new information that they get from the person they're speaking with. And even if we do get any information like the person is on blood thinner, that doesn't really change how we do our jobs. We still have to ask, the person or the caregiver what medications they're on and what blood thinner they're on. So that's.
Thank you, Angela. And thank you. And thank you for your EMT service. Betty Lavastik.
Good evening, everyone. I wish we could all be at home with our families and getting ready for Thanksgiving, but here we are. I don't live in the area of West School. My address is 69 Old Norwalk Road. What I can say is I switched carriers, and when I went to T-Mobile, my problems were all resolved. I frequent a party that lives on Winfield Lane. I use my flip phone or my regular phone, and I have absolutely no problems making phone calls inside the house or outside from that area. I can't speak of being in West School and making the phone calls, but people who are here, the residents that are here and on Zoom, could better answer their cell coverage. What I can suggest is that the town council members tonight, please focus on not only what the experts are saying, but also what the residents here have to say. I learned so much from the audience when they spoke. I never heard of FirstNet. I heard of, experts, or I can't say experts in the audience, but people who have knowledge that were not presented to us by Verizon. So when we make a decision tonight, and I hope it's not tonight, I hope there's a few other meetings that come about. My question would be, if the cell tower goes up, can Verizon guarantee 100% that every single phone call would be made, that every single EMS call would be made, that all cellular data that goes by would be made, that if someone is trapped in a basement and needs to make a phone call, can they guarantee that all of these calls would be made? And I think the answer is, there is no guarantee that if the cell tower goes up, that all of these needs would be met. So let's listen to the residents who live there, whose children attend the schools, who live there day and night, who would be in the area of the frequency waves that are there. Their voices are important. The people on Zoom, the people at further meetings need to be heard. So thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you, Betty. Thanks for coming out. All right, Megan Kupchak, you're up next. And then after that, it's Chris Salvatore. Thank you, Megan. Chris? Thank you. And after Chris is Joe Paulo.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Salvatore. I live at Parish Road. I have 4 daughters at West School right now. One of them, the youngest, is in preschool. So she's going to be there for the next 6 years. And that's a big reason why I'm here. I know we're talking about needs. First responders, I have most respect for what you do, but New Canaan is hardly Detroit or there's not police cars running up and down Ponus Ridge every night. So if there's an issue, I think what we're doing so far has worked. I'm not hearing about, horrible tragedies every day because the phone dropped. I heard about an EMS call to a family member that you had to drive down the road to make it. Wasn't a life or death situation. The call was made 2 minutes later. It seems to me that, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name at the end, but the point that you keep making about is this a need or a want? And it seems to me that this is a whole lot of wants. It seems that Verizon wants to increase their market share. The town wants some income, and first responders would enjoy having the extra data. But I don't think we're all here because the first responders made this happen. I think Verizon made this happen, and the first responders are going to benefit from it. I moved to New Canaan 3 years ago. I live on Parish Road, like I said. We have zero cell service. That didn't affect my decision to move in at all. I got Wi-Fi calling. I have service around my yard, my street. The reason I did move here was for the schools that you want to slap a cell tower behind. So it really defeats the whole purpose. New Canaan is not Norwalk or Stanford. It's New Canaan. It's a town. It's not a city. We try not to do multifamilies everywhere, but we're working on that too. And now we're going to slap cell phone towers behind schools. So it seems like the values and the character of New Canaan that I moved here for are being lost. And the leadership that I thought we had here is not what I expected. I can't believe we're here talking about putting a cell tower behind an elementary school. The only thing that I've seen that could be agreed on is that the most vulnerable people, and this, you can say it's not dangerous, it is dangerous, but the most vulnerable people are young. I heard that at the last P&Z meeting, the youngest are the most vulnerable. This is an elementary school. These are our most precious, vulnerable kids that we're supposed to protect. And we're going to think about money and income and Verizon's needs for a better, a greener, a redder map than our kids. So in 20 years, if my daughter develops a tumor, God forbid, I don't want to be sitting there next to her at the hospital bed thinking my decision to keep going to West School could have been a reason for it. And I hope you guys take that into consideration.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Joe Pallo. After Joe, it is Ann Emson. Thank you, Joe. Oh, well, you're bearing gifts.
I'm Joe Paulo from Arrowhead Trail. Tonight, we saw some very impressive maps from Mr. Baldwin. How do you know those maps are real? Don't you always like to look and get some sense of the data? Because the FCC says that Verizon and the other carriers do not disclose how they calculate these maps. They keep them secret, particularly the mobile maps that you saw. They won't show you the underneath data. And here's the problem. You have in your package this map put out by Verizon that more people see. This is if you're going to buy a cell phone. This is the coverage map. So if you're going to buy a phone, you get this map. If you're buying a tower, you get that map. So tomorrow, I'm going to send a letter to the chairman of Verizon, and I'm going to send them the two maps. And I'm just going to ask them, we got a blue map and a red map. Which map is real? If you were buying a stock, you wouldn't buy this stock. You'd say it has conflicting data. You don't know. The Verizon map shows that we have very good coverage at West School, and it even shows 5G. The AT&T map shows the same thing, as does the T-Mobile map. You have them in your package. But I found a map that no one in this room, maybe Mr. Brigatti has seen it before, and it has a big clue on the map. It's this one, put out by the Siting Council. There's a map in your package of every tower and antenna in the state of Connecticut. And they provide a legend. And I blew up the legend so that you could see what they say. They say that when they do their calculation for the state, use a radius of 2 miles or a diameter of 4 for every cell tower. That's on the map that you have. New Canaan's only 4 miles wide. Mr. Moynihan, now, we have 5 towers in the town. The one on 1837 would be Tower 6. We're sitting here tonight discussing Tower 7. They've talked about Tower 8, which is going to be on the east side, and something around the Nature Center, or 9 or 10 up. So do we need 10 towers when the Siting Council says the radius that they use for planning for the state is 2 miles? You never saw this map before. The other thing that's important to know is that the Centerline study, which I now like to refer to as the Centerline No Bottom Line study, basically did not account for the vast majority of the cellular infrastructure that we have in New Canaan. 3 of our 5 cell towers were not included. Soundview Lane, the Armory, and Silver Hill were not included. They were built after. And if you read the study, it actually says we need to do another study after 2 of those come online. The New York State antennas have been made compatible with Connecticut. There've been other improvements, small cells put around. So there's a lot of coverage here that has not been accounted for. And there's been really an underestimation when you see these numbers of it's a half mile or it's a mile. So I would say if you have no data, zero, upon which to say we have a need. So I gave you this little scale in the chart, and it basically shows those factors that you've heard, the maps that you can't identify, the 8-year-old study that doesn't account for 60 to 70% of our coverage, and then all the things in your packet, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, as well as several independent studies that say New Canaan is pretty good. Mr. Chairman, I know we have limited time, but I need to cover one more quick issue.
Yeah, that was 2 minutes, Joe, so wrap it up.
Real quick. I wrote to the siting council and I asked them if they had jurisdiction the way Mr. Bloom said in his memo. And they said no. And you have that statement in there. Basically, what has happened at the P&Z meeting is they violated 3 laws. They violated C4-10, which is they suspended discussion on the special permit based on the direction of Mr. Bloom. And therefore, there was no 2-week public notice and there was no vote of the siting council. So they suspended a town ordinance in violation of the town C4-10. And you now have an 824 report, which Executive Director Bachman has said they have no jurisdiction whatsoever. I gave you the memo. I've sent it to you. You know that. And I call on you now to say you have a defective 824 report. And if you let it stand, you're setting a precedent for extending the power of the siting council beyond where the legislature of the state has said it should go. And you're diminishing that for every town in New Canaan. And if you let that stand, if you don't take some measure of vote to correct and ask the P&Z to go back and have the meeting with the special permit requirement as they were supposed to have, then the Bloom memo is in direct conflict with what you have as the statement from the siting council. You swore an oath, each of you, to do your job according to the laws of the siting council, and the laws of C4-10 must be upheld. I'm calling on you now to do that.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
All right, up next, Ann Empson. Ann. Okay, next up, Jane. Jane. Oh. I don't know. Jane, 331 Dance Highway. Sorry. Getting late, my eyes are going bad.
Sorry, I just lost my my note. I'm Jane Raverett. I live at 331 Dan's Highway,
Hi,
New
Jane.
Canaan, Connecticut. The street that has a new cell tower, which we don't want, but does not have a new fire hydrant unless Mr. Moynihan can give me some new information about that. Anything? It's been what, 2 years since the fire? Anybody?
Let's not talk about that.
Guys, we're on cell towers, not fire hydrants. We got enough.
I can
we got
take
enough
this
issues.
offline later if you want to talk to me. I'd really like an answer.
Jane, you're using your time.
As Barbara said, we have new information from Apple saying that they will give emergency service to their new cell phone, which provides a great deal of coverage for people who are in an emergency, which I think is what we're talking about here. We also know that probably by the end of year, Samsung will also be a carrier that also has this kind of coverage. So that represents 85% of the cell phone market, which means that here in New Canaan, where we have access to these phones far more readily, there should be at least 85% of people within a few years that have coverage that where they can get emergency service through the satellite and do not even need a tower. I am asking tonight that you consider this because we live in New Canaan. We live in a place of wealth and privilege, and yet we have outdated information upon which to make decisions. That's not acceptable. Second of all, I would like you to consider asking everyone here, all of you and all of the selectmen, to disclose whether they have any financial or other interest in these towers. These towers are a very unique project in that the owners of the properties where these towers are placed can make secret the people who hold the properties. Currently at PONUS, we have an LLC whose members are unknown to us. We have no idea who they are, except for Tom Nisley, who is a friend of Mr. Moynihan's. I would suggest that this opens the door for a lot of problems, because if we are making decisions without understanding who is profiting from this, we do not know whether these decisions are being made in the best interest of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I am really sorry on this one too. Is this? I can read a phone number, 910-970-9565. You're up next. There we go. I'm sorry.
Sorry, my writing was maybe not great. Hello, my name is Karan Kiar and I live in 98 Dogwood Lane.
Can you spell that for me? I'm just going to rewrite it.
Which one?
Your name.
Oh, my name. K-H-I-A-R, Patrick.
Got it. Thank you.
Did you put your microphone up so that we all can hear you?
Yes.
Thank you
Is
very
it better?
Thank you.
So there's one thing which is troubling me is when I look at the map, I'm not on it. I've been in New Canaan since 2014. So it's bizarre that we're basing our discussion on something where I'm not even on it. The other thing that would be interesting is what the person did mention at the end of this table is that what is the business case? What is the business need? So the first thing, we need to have real hard data. And I mean, if it's a question of security, let's get the hard data and prove that the EMS cannot access the need what they have to call an emergency. Now, if it's not the case, fair, we can install a tower. Then why don't we ask all the people that have their kids in West School to give their opinion? Why don't we ask, including me, around the property where we will put this tower? What do they want? Do they really want it? Is it going to be a big deal if their phone drops, right? Now, if it's a question also of security, as we mentioned, sorry, I need to give you a background. I'm an aerospace engineer and I'm specialized in radar and satellite communication. My kids wants to West School and I'm very happy. There's a parent that I mean, honestly, if the tower was there and my kids were in West School, I would remove them. I worked on weapon for the military based on high frequency and radio wave. It's not good to be so close to a tower. So unless it's really needed, I think in a term of safety, I would not do that. The last time is that we need to have a better study, redo the study, redo the map. Why can't I see my property on the map, right? So, and finally, there's another person that asked a really good question, a selectman, say, there's a ton of other technology, meaning we have satellite, we have Starlink. That's mean if you want to the school to be fully loaded with 10 gigabyte connection, you can do that. You put a satellite on top of it and it's a small dish and you get everything you need. So I think there is no real study that say, what is the impact of the solution that you're taking versus the cost and versus the other thing. And you can talk to Verizon or other, they know that it's what they are proposing is not necessarily the most competitive. Thank you very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Colin Keenan. And after that, it's Kara O'Reilly? O'Reilly, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Colin Keenan over on Ponus Road. A lot of people made a lot of amazing comments, and I don't want to repeat that here, but I will add just a couple of things that we didn't chat about. One is the topology and morphology of this town is pretty brutal, and just putting towers up isn't gonna solve your problem. That low point on Greenlee and Ponus, you can put up 6 towers in the area, they're not gonna hit there. But when we think about why this, why now? What I didn't hear discussed is the nature of work and how we work and where we work. How we work and where we work has changed, given COVID, given technology. So whereas towns didn't want, or rather the carriers didn't want to invest in towns, choosing instead to increase, I don't know, Verizon was doing 600 small cells in Philadelphia, I think every year for half a decade. That's gone down. They're shifting out to the suburbs, which is where the people are. Just go to Talmadge Hill, some of the other parking lots in the area on a weekday, and you will see that kind of effect. The technology we've talked about, the other thing that is different about today versus 2014 is a carrier neutral solution. So before, you're the anchor tenant, you get the top spot 20 feet below it, you're the third or fourth one, you go more lower, you don't get as much coverage. Everybody's fighting over that top spot or not, but what happens with there's new providers out there, mostly on the small cell side, they're carrier neutral because the phones all work on the exact same network. Before there was a CDMA versus GSM problem, they couldn't, now they can. So you don't need to put up a tower with 4. You can put up a tower with 1, or how they really do it for the most part, densification is small cell networks. And then from a federal acquisition regulation standpoint, which I have some familiarity with, I'm just wondering why we're beholden to a company that did respond to won an RFP in 2016. Technology has changed. It would be great to get an independent third-party study again to see what's out there, see what technologies are out there, and then run an RFP. And if these guys are the ones to win, then so be it. But I believe they've only ever done macro towers, and the world has, for the most part, moved on past those. We're having an argument from 15 years ago, which is kind of depressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. All right, Kiara.
Hi, my name's Kiana O'Reilly. I'm at 112 Douglas Road in town. I feel like I was just here. I just 2 or 3 years ago was up here doing the same speech for the one that you put in at St. Luke's. I pulled my kids out of St. Luke's because I think it's absurd that you would put one of these in front of a school, next to a school. I don't care what the ages are. It's sitting right over their fields. I'd be interested to see what all of the Soundview residents who have completely had their property values destroyed, what they think about their cell phone service now, because they all said they had service before. So what did the one on Soundview do for the town? We don't live at West anymore. I did. Where would I put them? I pulled my kids out of St. Luke's. I don't know what I would do if my kids were still at West. We just moved into town recently. But I think the question was, what is the need and what does the town want, right? What do we need in this town? The meetings at the St. Luke's Tower, the meetings at this one, I have yet to get anybody who comes up here and stands up here and says, we want a cell tower. Where are they? The whole town gets up here to fight against having these cell towers. This is your town. So I would love to just hear more about what it looked like, the one that went in, how far it went, what did it increase, and where things stand with that one now. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Rochford. Leslie, where'd you gather here? And then Mark, you're next, Mark Bushman.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rochford. I live at 494 Wheat Street. I'm in a bit of a unique position because I run 7 miles a day, 7 days a week on the west side of New Canaan. And I have been doing that since I moved here in 2011. I've had to call 911 before. I've had to call kids to let them know I wasn't picking them up on time. I've fielded phone calls from everybody I know. I have never once, 7 days a week, lost a call. I spend more time on those roads than that gentleman who was here 8 years ago saying that he spent a lot of time on these roads. I spent a lot of prolonged times running these roads. And if anyone should be concerned about their safety in this town, it would be me because I'm running alone on the streets with only my cell phone to protect me. But I do keep an alarm because my safety is my own responsibility. But my point being that I've never had a problem. I've had to call 911. It is not an issue. We do not want this. The other thing is just as a test was I have children at West School. I made a phone call at 3:04 p.m. No problem in the parking lot, uninterrupted for 10 minutes. So we do not have a problem at West School in terms of service, nor do we anywhere I have run. And I have run all over the town and you will see me So this is really not a need. So thank you so much.
Leslie, while you're here, Leslie, what carrier do you have?
I have AT&T.
Okay.
I see Leslie all the
Guys,
time.
I wanna
I can
switch back.
attest
Yeah,
to her
me
running
too.
Thank you.
everywhere. See her all the time.
Good evening, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Mark Bushman, 359 Dan's Highway. First of all, I can attest that Leslie does run 7 miles a day. I do see her. It's pretty impressive.
I see her every day. I see Leslie every day.
That's a true statement. This is the second tower now that I'm fighting. The first one being 1837 Ponus Ridge, where we just finished the siting council, and that one is going up literally in my backyard. That has given me a lot of experience with Mr. Moynihan, Mr. Brigatti, Mr. Baldwin, Robinson Cole. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for actually even having a real hearing. The one problem with the hearing is that the actual experts that are supposed to speak aren't experts, they're advocates. You have a lawyer who's being paid by Verizon, you have an engineer who's from Verizon, Mr. Brigatti, whose firm has put up 9 cell towers in Connecticut, that's it, will also be paid through putting up a cell tower here. There's no one who's independently looked at this and actually has given you true independent views and advice. It's all been from advocates. Unfortunately, even, our first responders, I feel like Mr. Moynihan's is twisting their arm. So we'd like to actually get real information. I've done a FOIA request to see how many 911 calls actually were not put through cell phones because of an emergency, because of the network. What came back was 0. There was no instances of that. So maybe they're bad records. That could be another issue. But again, you have to have the real facts. And people have said it before, you need to have a third party come in who's not being paid, who didn't make some election promise. Everybody who's been around these towers in Ponus Ridge, at West School, we don't want them. And they're supposedly for us. So you have to consider that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. All right, that concludes. Hold on one sec. We got.
I didn't get to sign up.
Yeah, come on up and sign up. We'll give you that. You want us? We'll take a couple more, and then do we have anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we do. So when you finish this, I'll start calling on people on Zoom.
You're good. You're good.
Why don't we take one? Eric Ho on Zoom. You wanted to speak while the others are signing up?
That's great. Thanks, Tucker.
Sure, thanks a lot. Hi, my name is Eric Ho. I live on Bennington Place. I think it's a similar, I'm going to echo a very similar comment to the last speaker. I mean, I just ask that the town council please take into account all the information and all the information in an unbiased way. The data presented by Mr. Moynihan and his friends who are parading around that they've been working on this together for 10 years now just feels very cherry picked. I mean, the maps are pretty slick. And I bet they can make those look any which way they want. I think the lawyer said something about, oh yeah, they excluded some cell tower because, oh yeah, don't worry about it, doesn't matter, but who knows, right? I think Mr. Baldwin and the expert from, I don't know where he was from, they're all sitting here remote, right? Like I bet you they make these presentations multiple times a week, just replacing the name of the town. It just doesn't feel personal, doesn't feel related to what we're trying to do here. As kind of BS as it is to try to say that we're going to only make this conversation about needs and then health we can talk about in another conversation. I've been really impressed with the restraint that all my neighbors have and actually sticking to that. And I've learned so much just listening to everybody here. And I really ask that the town council please take those points into mind that these so-called experts seem to keep glossing over. And last thing I'll say is that I really appreciate those of you on the town council that are really probing into this, into the data, not just accepting it for what it is. I'd ask that all of you do that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Parker, you want to take another one?
That's the only one that I see right now.
All right. So next up is Susan from Dogwood.
So I'm Susan Chiar. That was my husband earlier with that French accent. The radar engineer. I am the CEO for 20 years of an artificial intelligence company. We have just recently started up our business here in New Canaan. So we're very excited to be bringing a pretty interesting company to town. I will say, I was a little disappointed, as was my husband, that we are not on the map for some reason. But if you look at the way that map was drawn, you're not looking behind West School, and that's us. So if you draw, we could, in the old days, they told us, actually, when we bought our house, that they used to walk through the woods where all the coyotes lived. Well, they still live because they're crazy and they're up all night. But I just wanted to say, as an owner, CEO, founder of an artificial intelligence company, I am appalled at the lack of research that has been done on technology on this proposal. I'm appalled. We've lived here since 2014. I was excited to bring my company here. I have had zero problem with any cell phone calls ever in my house, and I do work from home. And by the way, that is getting a new cell phone tower is not going to affect my business at all. I get everybody on Zoom. I have all the data I need. Fiber would be great, by the way, but we don't have that yet. The other thing I want to say, as a former parent of a West student, my son did go to West. Fantastic education. We absolutely moved here from London in 2014. We moved here sight unseen into a house on Dogwood Lane. And it has been the most amazing place that I could ever imagine raising a family. It is phenomenally beautiful. We're at the end of the cul-de-sac, backs right up to the old Winfoot. Between us is this amazing green space, beautiful trees, the coyotes, bobcats, every amazing and scary, and sometimes scary animal that you can think of. But what I really will be super upset about is listening to the whir and sound of those generators that are going to be powering this tower, and all the other problems that will be created to the wildlife, to the roads that are going to be paved. I sit back in my on my chair in the morning with my coffee, and it is, you can hear a pin drop. It's beautiful. The idea that I might just see also now in the woods, this looming tower, and the whirring engines of generators, it's beyond upsetting. I'm extremely grateful. Last thing I want to end on is I want to thank everyone on the council for their service. I think public services is just an incredible gift to the community. We have had the misfortune, unfortunately, in our family of having to make 3 calls to EMS. Thank you for life-saving things that you've done for our family, as well as the police. Those are never calls that anyone makes that wants to make them. We don't want to see you. We are so grateful for all of the service that you've given us to our family. And I still think right now, like, what can I do to keep thanking you? You save lives. And the one thing that I want to leave here with, my message to the council, is that the need that I hear is that our first responders need decent communication systems. And if we all walk away from this meeting with just one thing to take away, if we can all be in agreement that something needs to be done, this is all that they're being given right now. So they're hanging on to it for whatever reasons. And I'm sure that they're desperate. And this is it. This is the package that's being given to them. And I think we can do better for them. And again, my great appreciation for our family for all of the amazing service from the first responders to our home. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John Clark. And Vanessa Lowry is up next.
Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I was on the train. I couldn't sign in earlier.
Okay.
My name is John Clark. I live at 336 Ponus Ridge, 1 mile from West School. We have 2 kids who graduated from West School. We love West School. We really appreciate the town council hearing from the citizens on this issue. And I cannot improve upon many of the comments I've heard this evening on Zoom or here in person. I would just like to reiterate one point, since today we're talking about need. Let me say 2 points. Number one, I think Ms. Ormond has raised a very significant question. What need are we talking about? Are we talking about a need to stream sports? Because if that's the need we're talking about, and we're trading off potential health effects to kids, I think we should stick with the kids. Are we talking about first responders? Great. Is this the solution to address their need? I think the answer to that is probably not, but I know that that's another hearing, so we can talk about that at that hearing. Mr. Baldwin's presentation was excellent. I applaud him as a fellow member of the Connecticut Bar, but I noticed on his coverage map, If you assume coverage with the 1837 tower, the Country Club of New Canaan Tower, and I can't remember the other one, one other tower where Verizon is also going in, Soundview Lane, and you look at the blue area without West School, there's a limited sliver of white. And my neighbor Matt made this point, but it was one of many excellent points that he made. There's a limited sliver of white that will not be covered for Verizon. How many people live in that sliver of white? It's the Norotan River watershed. It is sparsely populated, very nice roads of the west side with very few houses, and there's no major road. Ponus Ridge Road is not in that white. I live on Ponus Ridge Road. Our cell service is fine. Please, this is a terrible idea. Come up with a better one. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Vanessa. And we're going to close it up after this unless there's anybody else in the audience that wants to speak.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Lowry. I'm a West School parent. I'm here tonight because I wanted to share with everyone that just a couple of days ago, a group of moms started a petition, West School parents opposed to a cell tower at our children's school. And in fewer than 48 hours, we've gathered almost 600 signatures. That's signatures from parents, signatures from New Canaan residents, both in the South District and East District. We do not want this tower. And I want to say one more thing in regard to need. One of the things that has not brought up but that is a need in this town, and we heard about it discussed at last week's Board of Education meeting, is our class size in New Canaan is growing. 2026, that kindergarten class will be the largest class that the town has seen in, I think, decades. We need the space at West School. We should not be leasing this to a developer for a cell tower. We shouldn't be putting ourselves in a position where we're going to have to, let's say, have overcrowding in our classrooms. That is a need that really needs to be considered as we're looking at this whole picture. And lastly, just as a parent, one of the things that has come up, particularly as we've all done site visits, is, wow, this is so close. I mean, you can hear the kids on the playground while you're on that site visit. That's what I've heard time and again. And a concern of all of us as parents is when if this tower was to be constructed, you're going to have 4 different construction crews working for months within just a few hundred feet of our kids on the playground. We don't want this. This is a bad idea for West, and this is a terrible idea to try to put it at an elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Tucker, is there anybody else on Zoom?
Now, is there anybody on Zoom? If you do want to speak, please raise your yellow hand. And I will call on you. I don't see anybody, Steve. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Last call for audience members. Everybody's spoken. Thank you. All right. Sure, Albie, come on up. We do have a regular meeting after this, believe it or not.
Chief Albie Bassett, New Canaan Fire. Just want to clarify, I understand the cell phone and making the phone call, the critical of that call going through, and they are going through many times. Yes, the iPhone 14 will grab satellite. As Russ mentioned earlier, it's data, it's the information that's coming to us. And the best thing I can in the fire service, we are back. We have a lot of mutual aid coming in. There's a lot of talk on the two-way radio. I respect EMS. There's one call at a time. There's one unit at a time. When the fire service is coming in, we're getting multiple towns to be efficient in the town of New Canaan. We deal with them on the radio. Critical information that person on the cell phone is telling our dispatcher, who's one person, typing it in a computer, is coming over via data. As we lose coverage, and I will go and look a little, I see my iPad, my MDT reconnecting quite often. I will make log of that as the council has asked. I'm not getting that data that's telling me that there's somebody in an upstairs bedroom. It's on the invalid, the handicapped person is in this bedroom. I'm not getting that. I'm getting that too late when I arrive on scene. They can't give me that over the radio sometimes because of the communications, or we miss the communication based on the number of apparatus that are responding. I respect police and EMS. There's usually 1, 2, maybe 3 units responding. We have upwards of 7 to 10 units on a house fire that are all on the radio at the same time. So two-way communication is very good, but that's where that data helps. And all the maps, everything that we get PDF that downloads onto our system, can't do it when the thing's spinning, just like at home when your Wi-Fi is down. It's continually spinning. I'm waiting for a floor plan of West School. I can't get that. It's all up in the system coming down. Thank you.
Thank you, Albie.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so that will conclude our public hearing. Thank you all for coming out. We will continue this. Thank you. All right, bathroom break, guys.
Oh, no, thanks for